2026 is here, a brand new year is upon us, and I love New Year's. It's one of my favorite holidays because it's a time of hope, of optimism. It's a time to dream of all the amazing surprises around the corner and to look forward to everything that we can accomplish together. But unfortunately, I can't do that just yet, because a few years ago, I got this crazy idea to start this stupid tradition where I have to begin every single year by looking back at all the fighting game releases and news of the previous year, meaning until this video is done, I'm still stuck in the despair pit that was 2025. Yes, folks, it's time once again. We're about to go through every single month from 2025, looking at everything from the world of fisticuffs. Every story, every DLC, every character, every brand new game, every re-release. And listen, in 2024, everyone kept telling me that year sucked for fighting games. They said it was a horrible year, and I refuted that claim. I thought 2024 was a strong year for fighting games. You just had to look. There was so much good news around you, so many things worth celebrating. 2025 actually sucked. This was a rough year for fighting games. And regular video games. And just people, just everyone in general, just lump all of us in there. It was a rough year all around. But there was good this year, and I'm going to make sure that we celebrate it. Even if we have to wade through the swamp of sadness in order to get to it. But before we begin, I will say something great that happened in 2025. We hit 100,000 subscribers, and I've already made a big celebratory video. I thank you all in there, and I will thank you all again now because I can never thank you enough. That was amazing, and I appreciate all of you for getting me to this point. Now let's go ahead and lose all those subscribers with the most uncomfortable video of the year. January, let's start with some quick ports. Guilty Gear Strive came to the Nintendo Switch, and Monstroscopy came to consoles. I talked about Monstroscopy last year, but it is a fun two-button fighter all based on old Mexican horror films. I really dig this game, and I salute the creative spirit behind it, but I will gladly admit at the time of this recording, the console ports are a bit buggy. The combat is just fine. If that's all you care about, then hey, that's great. But some of the smaller technical stuff gets a little bit finicky. Moving on to DLC, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero added a DLC pack based around the superhero movie. We all knew this was coming. This was the most obvious DLC this game could possibly have gotten. And I'll just go ahead and say right now, there's a lot of anime arena fighters this year, and all of them had tons of DLC. So to keep this video from getting too cluttered, I'm going to skip a lot of the Anime Arena Fighter DLC, but I will stop to point out anything interesting that comes up. Then Italis got added to Rivals of Aether 2, and probably the biggest DLC of the month, Conan the Barbarian got added to MK1. I want to spotlight Conan the Barbarian for two reasons. One is because I know people have been calling Mortal Kombat Smash Bros for your dad because the DLC characters are all 80s action heroes. But listen, I think most people of all ages enjoy some of these characters like the Terminator, the Predator, Jason Voorhees. These are icons that everyone finds cool. Can't really say that about Conan the Barbarian. No offense to Conan, Conan is great, but if you remember the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan the Barbarian movie, you are officially middle-aged. This might have been when Mortal Kombat's 80s nostalgia went just a step too far. But the other thing that I wanted to say about Conan is ever since MK1 came out, I have heard people saying this game isn't good because it's too slow. And yeah, I understand that. It does need to be faster to match the beloved Mortal Kombat games of old. But I've been saying for a while now that there is another problem with Mortal Kombat 1 that not a lot of people have brought up. This game really doesn't have a sense of impact to it. You go back to the Mortal Kombat games that everyone love and talk about all the time, and each hit feels heavy, like you're doing major damage. In Mortal Kombat 1, every hit kind of feels like, yeah, you're trying to shoo a fly away. And I'm bringing that up specifically with Conan because when he released, the people who were still playing Mortal Kombat 1 spoke pretty highly of him. I heard people calling him one of the better characters in the game, despite the fact that he was also one of the slowest characters in the game. However, his hits actually had some impact to them. That sword sound effect on every single hit made the attacks feel bigger. So yeah, for Mortal Kombat 2, or whatever the hell you're going to call the next game, I just want to throw it out there, speed is good, but don't forget the importance of impact. Make that screen shake a little bit more with every single hit. Make every single hit sound a little bit louder. Little stuff like that can definitely make people a little bit more excited. However, forget all that. Forget Conan the Barbarian, forget Ghostface, forget whoever the other 80s character was that they added. I completely forgot at this point. Because another character got added to Mortal Kombat 1 this month, and it was the best addition to the game. Now, look upon the glory that is Floyd. Yes, they add a secret ninja that you could find in the game named Floyd on a brand new stage, and this appeared with no announcement. He just showed up, and I remember people thinking that he was a myth. Someone faked a pink ninja and tried to spread it around like it was real. But no, NetherRealm actually added this into the game, and I bring this up because for the past decade, this studio has been leaning hard into nostalgia. Every MK game has advertised itself as, hey, remember Mortal Kombat 2? Hey, remember Mortal Kombat 3? Hey, remember the movie? Yeah, there was a movie. Remember the song from the movie? And I've just been like, yeah, that was all great, but you can't just say, remember that. If you want to appeal to my nostalgia, you have to make it feel like those old games did. You have to recapture the magic of them. And just giving me old costumes and classic fatalities and getting the actors from that old movie to come in here, it was nice, but it doesn't really do it for me anymore. But this did that. The greatest thing about early Mortal Kombat games was that there were tons of hidden secrets, and nobody knew about them. You heard your friend talking about Reptile, and you wondered, who the heck is Reptile? And then you would hear one rumor after another about how to unlock them, and then you would finally do it, and it was the greatest feeling in the world. And with Floyd, he just released with no warning, and nobody knew how to find him. Everyone on the internet for days were trading secrets back and forth until finally we cracked the code. I can't believe that in the modern age, for a few days, NetherRealm actually managed to recapture the feeling of old Mortal Kombat. I salute you for that, and I hope you take these lessons into the next game. And you know what, speaking of Warner Brothers fighting games, this month Multiverses added a brand new roguelike mode. Hey, it actually seems like a good idea. I've said it many times before, but I think roguelike modes are perfect for fighting games. So this was actually a good idea. Hopefully this can turn things around for Multiverses, and Multiverses shuts down permanently, and players shouldn't expect refunds. Well, we had a good couple of weeks. Time for the nightmare of 2025 to begin. Do I even need to talk about why Multiverses is shutting down? I went over several problems with it in last year's video. I think I talked for like 20 minutes about it, and that was with me heavily editing myself. All the changes to the combat turned off the more serious players, the boring single-player content turned off the casual players, the monetization turned off everyone, just everyone. Holy crap, I honestly cannot think of a fighting game with a worse monetization system. Like, damn, even children with no concept of how money works looked at this thing and said, that's disgusting. It was clear from day one they were aiming this game at whales. But this isn't a single-player gacha where you just need someone to keep pumping money into your little slot machine there. No, this is a fighting game. You need a large player base in order to make it happen. In other words, you need to make the game playable to non-whales, and you might as well have had a bouncer on the title screen asking players how fat their wallet was to see if they were allowed inside. And I stopped playing this thing after like 2 months, but for this video, I looked back at the history of all the changes that they made while I wasn't paying attention to it, and every single one of them felt worse. They eventually changed the way that you unlock characters because everyone kept complaining about, and I'm not even going to try and explain to you what exactly it is that they did, because in all honesty, I don't fully understand it myself. But it is actually shocking to me that somebody pitched this new idea, looked at, and then immediately realized it was going to turn off anyone still playing the game. I will say though, one of my problems that I brought up last year is that they delayed the game so they could add Unreal Engine 5, and that ended up breaking the game and adding a ton of glitches. And in return, the game didn't even end up looking any better. However, it turns out they didn't switch to Unreal Engine 5 because of the graphics. They switched to it because Unreal Engine 4 couldn't handle how many people jumped into this game at the beginning. So you know what? I apologize for that. I was wrong. That's actually an understandable reason to switch. Really wish you had just said that from the start, like, hey guys, thanks for playing the game. In fact, so many of you play this game that we have to switch to a bigger engine. I think way more people would have understood that than simply saying, we switched to this engine and now the models look even better. Wait, hold on, which one was the old model? I can't tell. If you do want to know more about all the issues with this game, there's a video that I saw from someone named RB Rocks who reviewed every single season of Multiverses, and then they compiled all those reviews into a single video. It was actually a really informative video, and also if you want to know what it was like to experience this game, you should probably get that opinion from somebody who was still actively playing the game. So if you want to check that video out, I will link it in the card that is popping up here. However, the biggest thing that I will remember about this news is that when it was announced that Multiverses was going to shut down, there was a maelstrom of information swirling around about what went on behind the scenes, and nobody could really tell what was real. There were so many people on Twitter and Reddit reporting on everything that went on behind the scenes or sharing their own personal stories of having worked at Player First Games and saying that everything at Player First Games was mishandled, including one individual who gave a personal story about how a PFG employee, quote, ruined his life. And I will admit, to that last story, that one definitely sounds like it might be true. But many of the other people that were saying these things were completely unverified or their posts got taken down, so were they real, or was it just people dogpiling on Multiverses because they smelled blood in the water? Was the whole company to blame? Was it a single individual? Who exactly did what? And then there were just the countless rumors being pulled out of everyone's collective butts. Like, there were rumors going around that there were a dozen completed characters, but the game's director, Tony Huynh, made them scrap them in favor of less popular characters because he liked them. Rumors that were so unfounded, even the people who claimed that they did work for the company and were sharing all the horrible information about what went on behind the scenes had to step in and say, yeah, those rumors aren't true at all. Or my personal favorite, John Tobias' son, said on Instagram, quote, unfortunately, Tony doesn't take any advice/ideas and is a direct result of the game's failure. Only cares about being famous. And I had so many people linking me to this. Anytime that I mentioned the problems with Multiverses, someone jumped out to say it was Tony's fault. Just look at what John Tobias' son said. And I mean no disrespect at all when I say this, but who the f*** is John Tobias' son? I mean, I know who John Tobias is, and I'm sure that his kid is a very nice guy. But did he work on Multiverses? Did he have first-hand experience working under Tony Huynh? Did he know someone who did? Or did he meet him at a party and he just didn't like him? Maybe he's right about this, but there's literally no way to prove it, and yet everyone took it as the gospel truth. Let's be real, after this game got shut down, everyone was salivating to point fingers at Player First Games, and don't get me wrong, I would not be shocked if this was their fault. I would not be shocked at all if this company was mismanaged. I mean, you look at the credits of Multiverses, and you look at the experience of everyone who worked on this game, and it was clear from day one, this team was in way over their head. Maybe they had zero idea what they were doing. But it got to a point where people were so ready to blame Player First Games, I actually heard multiple people say it wasn't Warner Brothers' fault at all. It was all Player First Games. It was Tony Huynh. Warner Brothers did nothing wrong at all. And I'm just like, what Warner Brothers have you been paying attention to? We have spent the last decade hearing one story after another about Warner Brothers destroying their games and movies, but you're now telling me that Multiverses, the game that broke records with their player numbers and the game whose studio they decided to buy up, was the game they decided to leave alone. Yes, there is a chance that's exactly what happened. There is a chance that they're totally innocent in this. Maybe this really was all Tony Huyhn's fault. I'm just saying that if we were to hold a trial for Multiverses, when Warner Brothers shows up with blood on their hands and they tell you, oh, don't worry, this is from the other game that I just got finished murdering, not Multiverses, maybe you should ask a follow-up question. So yeah, here's to you, Multiverses. You truly will go down in history. Just not for the reasons you wanted. God damn it. The year just got started, everybody. I got 11 more of these to go through. February is here, and speaking of Multiverses, Lola Bunny and Aquaman got added to the final season of the game. There's more to say about Multiverses, but I think I've said enough for now. Then while we're talking about DLC, yeah, that was pretty much the entire month. Sandolphin got added to Grand Blue, they seem pretty cool. Mai got added to Street Fighter 6, and holy cow, this character was busted. I'll admit it's been a few months since I jumped into Street Fighter. I needed to take a break after that giant retrospective we did, but damn, I remember at release, she was just bonkers good. People were saying she's one of the biggest problems in the game for the first half of the year. Then Under Night 2 add Ogre. This is a character who has been hinted at since the very start of the game over 10 years ago. So it's kind of wild to see them finally being playable, and he is a ton of fun. He's a super easy and accessible punch man who just pressures the hell out of your opponent. Unfortunately, just like last year, Under Night is forever cursed to drop all their releases at the same time as another game. Because the same weekend that they released Ogre, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves dropped their beta. I played the beta and it took me a couple seconds to figure everything out, but after I did, I have to admit, this game was a ton of fun, had a lot of promise to it. I wonder how the rest of the year will go for the game. Yes, we're going to talk about that. And that. And also that, but give me some time, we got a couple more months before it shows up. Then the only other news this month was that the Hidden Ones, a cross between an action game and an arena fighter, got a beta. I didn't play this one, but everyone who did spoke very highly of it. And lastly, 5 Force Fighters got a demo. Again, didn't get a chance to play this, but I am really looking forward to this game. Out of all the indie fighters on the horizon, I have been following this one very closely for years, and I can't wait to see it finally release. Alright, February wasn't so bad, so let's hope that March can keep that going. Beast of Mystery got added to Steam. I talked about this last year, but it's a fine game using cryptids. Sounds very up my alley. It's still in early access, but if you didn't want to check it out on itch.io, then now you've got a chance to play it here. Then a brand new game got released, Iron Saga Versus. This is a mech fighting crossover game using multiple giant robots. I'll admit, when it comes to giant mech series, my knowledge is very basic. Gundams, Evangelion, Gurren Lagann, that's about it. So I'll admit that I do not recognize a lot of these characters here, so I can only really judge the content and the combat of the game itself, and you know what? Pretty darn good. I had a lot of fun with this game. When you look at the graphics, it feels a bit simple, like each character's animations aren't very elaborate, but there's this really nice sheen all over it. The cell shading is great in here. It really does make it feel like it's coming right out of a classic cartoon. And the combat is simple but fun. I went into this expecting something kinda nutty and over the top, and I'm sure that at high levels it probably can reach that. But I actually found this to be a much more basic, grounded, footsies-heavy game. But that's not a bad thing. If that's what you enjoy in fighting games, then I think this game will feel pretty darn good to you. And it has some really nice flourishes to help spice it up. I like how the counters work, and you can choose different variations for your characters, and I always love when a fighting game does that. I think this is a really solid fighter. If you like what you see on screen, then go ahead and check it out. And there was one more fighting game released this month, Bleach Rebirth of Souls. Now let me just go ahead and say, I love Bleach. There was a time when it was my favorite anime. I fell off it over time though, but I've still got a spot in my heart for it. But I'll admit, I didn't play this because I'm just not into arena fighters. I loved them when I was a kid, but they're just not my thing anymore. So I can't really talk about the combat or any of the content from a first-hand point of view, but I can say that the graphics look stunning. This game is gorgeous. However, general reaction to this game seemed to have been meh. Yeah, it got some very mediocre reviews, and most of the people I saw playing it dropped off it pretty quick. And again, I didn't play it myself, but just watching other people play it wasn't really doing anything for me. The game seemed fine, but nothing about it really blew me away. Sorry I don't really have anything else to say about it, but like I said, arena fighters just aren't my thing, so even if I had played it, I would not be the right person to talk about it. Then in the world of DLC, Venom got added to Guilty Gear Strive. Venom's a cool character, and I know people have been asking for him to be in this game since the very start, so it's great to see him return. Also love that Robo-Kai has been added as his little partner. That actually got a couple laughs out of me. And in the world of fan games, UMVC 3 Community Edition got another update with multiple brand new characters. It is nothing short of amazing what these modders have been able to do with this game. And last year I mentioned that there had been a breakthrough with this mod because previously, if they wanted to create a brand new character for this game, they would have to take moves from other characters in the game and essentially Frankenstein them all together into a brand new character. But last year, they figured out how to import moves from other games into this one, giving them immense more freedom with their character creation. And you can immediately see a difference. Compare the movesets of the characters that you see in this reveal trailer to the characters you were seeing over a year ago, and it is night and day. These characters feel fleshed out in a way that we couldn't have dreamed of a few years ago. And they kicked this big update off with some brand new artwork of Rashid and Cyclops doing the legendary handshake. That's just a nice touch. I love seeing that. And a Kickstarter for a brand new fun game called Animation vs. Launch. The characters are all stick figures, but the animation actually looks awesome. And they asked for a goal of 130,000. Guess what? They raised over $1 million. That is huge. Congrats to this team. I can't wait to see the final release of this. But now it's time to talk about some controversies from this month. First up, 2XKO announced that it would only include 10 characters in its launch roster. Okay, listen. Making fighting games is hard. Making fully fleshed out characters is hard. We all know that. We have a show on this channel called Build a Roster where I come up with hypothetical rosters for fake video games, and I know I tend to go pretty big with those rosters, but that's only so I can make the episodes interesting. I will fully admit, speaking realistically, I understand why a fighting game would have a small base roster. These games cost a lot and take a ton of time, and small rosters are very understandable. How the hell is this game only going to have 10 characters? You're Riot Games, a massive juggernaut in the gaming industry, and you have been working on this thing for what feels like a decade at this point. What the hell is happening? I've heard rumors that this game basically just started out as a passion project and it was just being made by a handful of guys in their free time up until about 2 years ago, and I have to assume that that's true because otherwise 10 characters is insanely low. Now moving from disappointing news to actually possibly criminal news, Hidden Variable, the developer of the Skullgirls mobile spin-off, announced this month that they would cease development on the game and they were suing the game's publisher, Autumn Games, for over $1 million because they claim they withheld that money from them between November of 2024 and January of 2025. They have given them until January of 2026 to pay them back all the money that they owe them. What deity did Skullgirls offend in order to be this cursed? For anyone who doesn't know, I was planning on doing a Skullgirls retrospective in 2022, even got the thumbnail for it made. Then they entered into a lawsuit and I said, okay, well I need to wait until that's done. And then every single year, it feels like there is a brand new struggle that pushes that retrospective back again. One day there will be peace in Skullgirls land, but today ain't that day. And then the final story of March is kind of odd because it's also the first story of April. Anna Williams got added to Tekken 8, except that she didn't. She actually joined the game officially at the start of April. But if you paid extra, then you got access to her a few days early at the end of March. So, you know what, seeing as how she officially joined next month, I guess we can wait until April to talk about the current state of Tekken. So Tekken's broken. Yes, Anna officially joined the roster, but who cares about that? The other bit of Tekken news overshadowed her and arguably every other DLC character Tekken got this year. They installed a balance patch into this game, and I have never seen an audience this mad at a balance patch.
No, are you? What? What? Is that? How much is it on block? How much is it on block? No, is it only? Hey, minus 12. Are they dumb in their head?
I'm stuck on the ground. I'm stuck. This is not real. This is not real. This is.
Get up. Your ass. Come here.
Why did it? Sake, man! What is this stupid game, bro? What was that? What? No! 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 Bro! It's over! Tekken 8 is over!
What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they actually doing?
Tekken 8 was already known for being more aggressive and offensive than Tekken 7, and most people enjoyed that. Not everyone, some people thought it was too much, but yeah, the majority of players that I spoke to really enjoyed this. But then in 2024, they put a balance patch into the game that ended up breaking it. It became buggy and low with glitches, but slowly Tekken was able to fix itself over time. So in 2025, they decided to do it again. Except this time, the balance patch didn't make the game glitchy, it just made the characters way too strong. Like, it was stupid what players could do now. Everyone was complaining about this. I am not kidding you. This balance patch was released on April 1st, and people were literally asking, is this an April Fool's Day joke? Although, I will admit, I got a little bit of schadenfreude out of the whole situation. Because for years, whenever the issue of nerfs would come up in the FGC, there would be many players out there who would say, you shouldn't nerf. You should buff the weaker characters to make them as good as the stronger characters. You should only nerf when a move actually breaks the game. Otherwise, you should never nerf. And I have always been on the exact opposite side of that argument. Yes, if a character is weak and buffing them would fix that problem, then certainly do that. But saying don't nerf, only buff is insane. There are indeed times when a character is too strong, and even if they're not broken strong, raising the power level of every single other character until everyone is doing the craziest things you can imagine is a recipe for disaster. It is impossible to perfectly balance a game. It is a fool's errand. But you try the best you can, and we all try to accept that. But if you say, okay, that character is too strong, so let's make all the other characters stronger, that will inevitably lead you to say, wait, that character still isn't as strong as everyone else. Buff them some more. Wait, now that character is the weakest. Buff them. Wait, now that character is the weakest. Buff them. Wait, now that character is the weakest. Hold on. Wasn't that the original character that was already too strong? Why do we have to buff them now? If you want to favor buffs over nerfs, great. But not wanting to do nerfs at all is madness. It's the equivalent of someone not wanting to eat vegetables because they just need protein. You just need meat. That's all you need to be strong. No, dude, you need to eat a salad every now and again. Otherwise, your heart is going to explode. And I saw a lot of those players who love to say that you shouldn't nerf characters the week after this patch dropped saying, I never said that you should only buff. I never said don't nerf. When I said that you should buff instead of nerf, I didn't mean all the time. And yeah, I can't lie. I got a little bit of entertainment out of that. Am I being incredibly petty? Probably, but listen guys, it's incredibly rare that I'm proven right within the FGC. Let me take this victory lap. Well, on to lighter news, Pocket Bravery came to consoles. Pocket Bravery, really fun game, a love letter to a lost era of fighting games, cool art style. This thing is just a pure passion product. Make sure to go and support it. Then in the world of DLC, Olympia, a mouse with stone fist, came to Rivals of Aether 2. Then, competitor for the weirdest news story of the year, famous unreleased fighting game and delirious fever dream, Tattoo Assassin, has always had a problem with its sound. Being an unfinished game that only exists within the darkest corners of Fightcade will do that to you, I imagine. But turns out the sound wasn't busted. There was just a problem with how the game was ported. But this month, that got fixed. Which means that an unreleased game from the 90s just got a patch to fix a bug. God bless the mad scientists of the FGC, they never give up on a game. Then, in unfortunate news, it was announced that CE Otaku would be cancelled this year. For those of you who don't know, CE Otaku is a spin-off of the major tournament CEO that focuses largely on anime fighters. This has been an important part of the anime fighting scene for years, going back to 2015. But unfortunately, according to the showrunner Alex Jabali, the event was just costing too much to run. But he does have hopes that will return again, which does raise a lot of questions about how much do these events cost, are they bringing in enough money to sustain them, how big should CE Otaku be, is the FGC trying to grow into something larger than it can sustain, none of which are fun topics and I'm not qualified enough to give them the answers that they need. But money and the size of tournaments? I have a feeling that's going to be a bigger issue in the coming years. But let's end the month by talking about some brand new releases. First up, Two Strikes. This is the latest in the one-hit KO genre of fighters, like your Bushido Blades or Sklash from last year, except this one has the bravery to ask the question, what if we did two-hit KOs? Yes, you can take your opponent out with 2 light attacks or 1 heavy attack. But beyond that, it's exactly what you'd expect from this type of game. It's pure footsies, and knowing that each hit could be your last makes it incredibly tense. Plus, I love this art style. Those profile images go incredibly hard. But of course, the big release this month was Fatal Fury: City of the Wolves. Yes, the first Fatal Fury game in 26 years, and the game that would finally wrap up the cliffhanger ending from Galro Mark of the Wolves. If you were an SNK fan, this was a big deal, and the game released a pretty positive reception. The combat was applauded for having an impressive amount of depth thanks to the brand new rev gauge, although I will admit there were people saying that was too similar to Street Fighter 6's drive system, but honestly, this wouldn't be the first time that people drew comparisons between Capcom and SNK. Those teams have always been mentally linked. The graphics were also an improvement, and I dig the little bits of flair like the old school comic pixels that pop up when you do supers, and all the new characters were pretty big hits. I have seen Preacha all over the place this year. Speaking of those characters, worth pointing out, this was one of the few times that SNK has actually tried to have an English dub, and you know what? It's okay. I do not envy anyone who has to do the English voice of Terry Bogard. That guy's Japanese voice is iconic, but Michael Allen Schneider did a really good job. They were actually able to match Terry's big, lovable meathead energy. So yeah, SNK put out another really solid fighting game that can appeal to players of all skill levels. Congrats to these devs. But unfortunately, that's not the only thing that we have to say about this game. I would love nothing more than to say this game is good and then move on. But surprise, this just turned into part 5 of the King of Fighters retrospective. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, this is the first major release to come out of SNK since they were bought up by the MISC Foundation, an organization that is owned by Mohammed bin Salman, the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, and someone who is known for buying up dozens of major corporations and entertainment venues to try and raise the popularity of Saudi Arabia on the global stage, and distract people from his laundry list of human rights violations, including killing journalists and imprisoning peaceful protesters and marginalized groups when they try and ask for equal rights. We talked about this a few years ago at the end of our King of Fighters retrospective when he bought up SNK, and since then, I think a lot more people have started to realize this is a thing. Even South Park is making episodes about this now. This is no longer an out there issue you have to search for, it's pretty common knowledge at this point. And in that King of Fighters retrospective, we talked about how this is really just a terrible situation, and we went back and forth on all the moral issues surrounding this. We talked about how people are protesting SNK now because they don't want their money going towards Salman, but then other people are arguing that everything is owned by evil people now and you can't focus on that too much or else you'll go insane. But on the other hand, if you just ignore every evil person buying up something that you enjoy, then that's just how evil people are able to keep buying up the stuff that you enjoy. Also, the whole everything is owned by someone evil argument, I hate to be blunt here, but you guys gotta be more sympathetic on this and understand some people just have a limit that they won't cross. And crunching your employees and not paying them is definitely bad. Hell, Riot Games is famous for the abuse they put on their employees, and they also have a fine game coming out this year. But flat out murdering people is a whole other level of bad, and you have to understand, yeah, a lot of people aren't going to cross that line, and understandably so. And I know some people argue that Salman also owns 5% of Capcom, so if you buy Resident Evil or Street Fighter, both of which will, let's be honest, outsell Fatal Fury several times over, then your money is also going towards him. And yeah, you should be aware of that, and that's definitely a good point to raise. But at the same time, I can't argue with someone who says 5% of their purchase going towards someone evil is different than 97% of it. One of those numbers is indeed noticeably larger than the other one. Listen, as I said, we tried to capture all the various arguments about this in our King of Fighters video, but it's really just a crappy situation, and I can't tell you what to do. I can only speak for myself, and going into this game, the devs at SNK said that the MISC Foundation had been hands-off. They left them alone to make this game, and that was good news. I like these devs. I want to support them. I'm glad that they still have their freedom. And also, yeah, I don't want my money going towards Salman, but let's be totally honest here. It's SNK. SNK games do not sell. They break even and then they make a little extra money to keep them going, keep them growing, but they ain't busting blocks. So if you do buy this, let's be real, Salman ain't making any money off this because this game isn't going to make enough money to reach him. It'll go back into SNK until they break even, and then they'll split lunch at the corner store with what they have left over. That's just the reality of SNK. So with those low sale numbers in mind, this really wasn't that big of an issue, because the only way that this new Fatal Fury game could go towards supporting Salman is if they just use this game as a big advertisement for Salman's business ventures. Like, if they just ham-fistedly shoved in there a walking advertisement for one of Salman's businesses, then yeah, that would be bad. That would actually be benefiting him. So as long as they don't do something stupid like that, then I can buy this game and enjoy it, and everything is going to be okay.
Let's have some fun. For the love of the game.
Oh! That's an actual, real person in my fighting game. 2 actual, real people in my fighting game. One of whom is the star player for Salman's soccer team, and the other one is Salman's favorite musician who plays parties for him and does advertisements for Salman's businesses. It's literally the exact thing I said would be my breaking point. Yeah, f*** this game. I'm not kidding you. That was the exact rule I put on this game, and they broke it. And yeah, I didn't buy it. You'll notice I commented on the characters being popular, on the voice acting, on the art style, but when it came to the combat, I said, this is what other people said about, because I have no idea what the combat is like. I played that free beta before these guys got announced, and that's all I played. And I'm not saying that so that I can stand up here and be like, oh yes, look at me, I stood by my morals on this one. No, that's not why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because A, I want to let you all know, don't expect me to go deep with this game because I can't, I didn't play it, I can't say much beyond just how it looks. And B, and far more importantly, if I, the guy who did a whole retrospective on Fatal Fury, and the guy who has been cheering on SNK for years on this channel, said, F this game, what do you think the people who were just slightly interested in the game thought? Yep, time to talk about the reception of this game, and I don't just mean the critic scores. To start with, let's talk about these 2 real-life people that they add into the game. Literally nobody was excited for them. In fact, that's putting it lightly, because first up you had Cristiano Ronaldo, who everyone knew was on Salman's soccer team, so that just flat out told us, hey, you all know why he's here, it's in your face. Yeah, I know some people are mad when I bring up Salman and you're saying, why can't you leave politics out of this? But I'm sorry, dude, it's hard to leave politics out of this when the politics are literally in the starting roster. And if that wasn't bad enough, it took the FGC like an hour before they dug up, this Ronaldo guy has actually been taken to court multiple times for sexual assault, including one case where a leaked conversation between him and his attorney has him allegedly admitting to it. And yeah, the Salman sting on this game was bad enough, but now there was a whole other shadow hanging over it. I actually saw multiple tournament organizers saying that they were going to ban Ronaldo from their City of the Wolves tournaments because they weren't going to force any of their players to have to go up against an alleged predator. And then you got Salvatore Ganacci.
Who?
Yeah, Ronaldo sucks, but at least he's famous. Anyone with even a vague understanding of soccer knows who he is, so you can understand a dev being excited to put them in their game, thinking it will probably bring in sales. Who the hell is Salvatore Ganacci, and why is he taking up a character spot? Well, for anyone who doesn't know, Salvatore Ganacci is an EDM DJ, and you know something? He's not bad. I looked up some of his stuff, and he's got some good tracks. But I will admit, I don't know anything about EDM, it's not a type of music I listen to. So I kept thinking, okay, I don't know him, but he must be big within the genre. So I looked up articles and videos on the most popular EDM stars, the highest selling, the most streamed, and this dude wasn't on any of them. I looked up the most streamed EDM artist of the year. Not on there. Highest selling of the year. Nope, nothing. The only list I found him on was a list of the top 100 EDM stars of all time, where he didn't even rank. He was in the other honorable mentions category. So I'm not trying to be mean here, especially about something I don't have any personal experience with, But I'm starting to think even the EDM fans don't know who this guy is. So why is he in this game? Well, he came out and made a video where he said he always loved SNK and always wanted to be in an SNK game. And you know something, the SNK devs do crazy stuff all the time, so maybe they did decide to put him in here because they just liked each other. I mean, they've put smaller celebrities in their spin-off games before. Maybe they just decided now to start putting them in their mainline games. Is what we all thought for about half a day. Then we found out that Ganache has performed at Saudi Arabian sporting events, Salman parties, and appeared in ads for Salman-owned organizations. Yeah, apparently Salman is just a big fan of Ganache, and suddenly nobody is wondering why Ganache is in this game. And let me just say, people hate on both these guest characters from the moment they drop, but Ganache was treated almost like a joke character, which does match his persona. He does present himself in a humorous light. Most of his music videos are really silly, and his stage in this game and his moves even have references to those videos. But because he was so jokey in this game, after a few weeks, I saw people starting to say, hey, everyone likes Ganache now. And I have to ask, who are you including in everyone? Because to this day, most of the reactions I see are still, get this guy out of my Fatal Fury game. Yes, I know he's a fan of Fatal Fury. Yes, I know he's got a funny moveset, but it's still a rich person paying to put their real-life friend into your video game that they don't fit in. Let me put it to you like this. I have a friend, Rebecca, who loves Dungeons & Dragons. I know nothing about Dungeons & Dragons. I don't care about it at all. But let's say I won billions of dollars, and then I bought Dungeons & Dragons. And then the employees at Dungeons Incorporated came out and said, yeah, he's been pretty hands-off, don't worry, he's not telling us what to do. Then the brand new dungeon manual came out, and right there on the freaking cover of it was my real-life human friend Rebecca. Not some elf or wizard based on them, no, just a real-ass human being in jeans and a hoodie standing next to your favorite D&D fantasy characters. Don't you think the D&D players out there would be justified in being pissed? And don't you think telling them, no guys, it's cool, Rebecca really likes D&D and they're really funny in the campaigns, would be kind of a stupid argument? But this was just the beginning, because the moment Ronaldo got announced for this game, it was the start of... not a downward spiral, no, it was more of like that ride at Disneyland where the elevator just plummets underneath you. The final few months of the build-up to this game will go down as one of the worst advertisement campaigns in video game history. This will be studied in marketing schools for generations to come. They started spamming Fatal Fury everywhere. It was sponsoring boxing matches, slapping it all over WrestleMania. They did a big animated commercial with iShowSpeed. This is arguably the most attention I have ever seen a fighting game get. Just one problem, nobody knew what the hell they were advertising. Yeah, this was stunningly stupid. I cannot fathom the mental gymnastics that went into this. The iShowSpeed ad shows the boxers for the upcoming match playing City of the Wolves for 2 seconds, then everyone gets sucked into the game until it leads into the official boxing match. I cannot stress this enough. If you did not already know what City of the Wolves was, you did not think that this was a real video game. You thought this was a fake game that they made up to be the theme of the boxing match. And I'm not making that up. I was actually talking to someone who said that they had a coworker who was talking about how excited they were for this match. Then they asked that coworker, so, are you going to check out City of the Wolves? And he said, yeah, of course I'm going to watch the match. He thought City of the Wolves was the name of the match. He seriously had no idea it was a video game. And that's not even the only story I've heard like that. It drove me nuts. How could you spend all this money on sponsoring these massive events, plastering yourself all over them, paying these big personalities to do advertisements for you, and then you barely mention the game you were advertising? I said this online and somebody said something that just left me dumbstruck. Not because it was insane, but because I knew it was true. They said, that's because they're not using the boxing matches to advertise Fatal Fury, they're using Fatal Fury to advertise the boxing match. And I just thought, why are you using the smaller thing that needs all the promotion it can get to promote the big thing that doesn't need any promotion? And that's because SNK has had a problem for many years now, where SNK still thinks it's the 90s. They still think that they're the top dog of the arcade. No, dude, that was a quarter of a century and 2 bankruptcies ago. Nobody knows who you are anymore. In that iShowSpeed commercial, the ghost of Geese Howard shows up with no intro, and all I could think was 99.9999999% of iShowSpeed's audience has no idea who the hell that is. And you are doing literally nothing to introduce them or any of the other characters. And hell, I'm not even mentioning all the YouTubers that they pay to do ads for them or sponsored streams, none of whom felt like the right audience for it. I saw AlphaRad do an ad for City of the Wolves, and nothing against AlphaRad, I like AlphaRad. But in that advertisement, he literally had to stop and tell his audience, oh, by the way, this is the game where that guy Terry from Smash Bros is from.
Level up your fighter with your own built-out kit of skills to get yourself to the top. Be sure to check out Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves. And for my former Smash audience, this is the Terry Bogard game.
Because nobody outside of die-hard fighting game fans have any idea what this is. SNK, you are not Tom Brady. You're Rudy. You're the plucky little guy we all root for because even if he's not big, he's still got heart. But SNK still keeps walking into the place, acting like they're the king of the ring, and they just keep having to learn this lesson over and over again. And with City of the Wolves, holy crap, did they ever learn this lesson. The game this month finally released, and I'm going to throw some numbers at you. When Street Fighter 6 dropped, it had a player high on Steam of 70,000 players. Tekken 8 had a Steam high of 46,000. Guilty Gear, almost 31,000. King of Fighters 15, 8,000. Okay, you know what? Yep, that is a drop, but like we said, SNK games do have smaller audiences, so that is to be expected, and those numbers are still fine. That is nothing to scoff at, and Fatal Fury, hey, that thing received so much more advertisement. Obviously, it's going to be way higher, right? Its player high was 4.5 thousand. Almost a 50% drop from SNK's last fighting game. And I have to stress something right now. If you know me, you know how much I don't like bringing up player numbers. Because I hate when people do that. I hate when people say, oh, it's under this number. It's a dead game. I'm that guy who says, hey, 20 people are online playing this game right now? Well, you got yourself a party. But I have to bring this up because when you consider how much money they spent on advertising, on the guest characters, not to mention just on the actual production of the game itself, you look at those numbers and you realize this thing is going to go down in history as one of the biggest fighting game bombs of all time. And I want to remind you all, I love SNK. I'm not saying this to dunk on them, I'm saying this because I'm mad this happened when it could totally have been avoided. It's like seeing a friend of yours getting mauled by a bear after you kept screaming at them, for the love of God, stop messing with that bear. But that brings us to the end of City of the Wolves. I knew this was going to be the worst story I had to cover this year, but at least it's over. The game came out, it's done, we can all move on. Welcome to the second month of the City of the Wolves crisis. We have no idea how many copies City of the Wolves sold, and I can guarantee you SNK will never willingly tell us. But according to Famitsu, the game sold only around 9,000 copies on the PlayStation in Japan in the first 2 weeks. 9,000 copies! SNK is offering $1 million to the champion of their Fatal Fury tournament. If this game only sold 9,000 copies in Japan in the first 2 weeks, I'm not even sure it made $1 million. Needless to say, looking at these Steam player numbers and those Famitsu numbers, this game performed way way below expectations. I already mentioned this, but SNK has a track record of thinking that they are way bigger than they actually are, and apparently Salman and the Misk Foundation bought into that. When this bizarre advertisement campaign kicked off, I thought Salman must just be a massive Fatal Fury fan, so much so that he's willing to burn a stack of cash just to put in people's faces. But when that person on social media told me earlier that they're not bothering to explain what Fatal Fury is in those boxing ads because they actually think Fatal Fury is big enough to promote this match, I knew they were right. They actually think Fatal Fury is bigger than professional boxing. They thought this thing was going to do Street Fighter numbers, Mortal Kombat numbers, Smash numbers, and when they shoved Ronaldo in there, you know they were thinking, hey, if 5% of his Instagram followers buy a copy of this game, we're set for life. But not only is Fatal Fury a very small niche game, a niche game that hasn't had a new installment in a quarter of a century, but these guest characters and this awful campaign turned away a massive chunk of the people who actually did want to buy it. So this was the rare nightmare scenario of not only did the game flop, but the owners thought it would bring in more money than it ever had any chance of reaching. Editor for Eurogamer, Alex Donaldson, made a post on Blue Sky saying, quote, "When someone connected to this game's development told me how many copies the new Saudi brass expected it to sell, I actually laughed out loud. I so want to know what that number is." Well, 3 weeks later, SNK's CEO Kenji Matsubara left the company, and while it hasn't been said that this was connected to the low sales of Fatal Fury, that is a conclusion I am more than willing to jump to. Hell, that's not even a jump. I can walk to that conclusion. And they didn't deserve this. But I think we all kind of saw it coming. Anytime that I say I'm not buying Fatal Fury, people always tell me, but if you don't buy the game, then you're not supporting the developers, and then they're going to lose their jobs. But as much as I hate saying it, there was no amount of money this game was going to realistically bring in to get even close to the numbers they wanted. I said it sold 9,000 copies on consoles in the first 2 weeks. You could add 2 zeros to the end of that number, and I still don't think it would have brought in what SNK wanted. Or more accurately, what SNK's new bosses wanted. Yeah, the Misk Foundation and everyone else giving SNK instructions now clearly wanted this to be one of the biggest video game releases of the year, and I'm sorry, that's not SNK. SNK makes mid-level fighting games, and to clarify, mid does not mean bad. Mid is not referring to the quality of those games. It's not referring to the combat of those games. It's referring to the budget and the size of its audience. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's actually kind of a good thing. We should be encouraging more mid-level games out there. More games that are just aimed at a smaller audience out there with a budget that will match that. But unfortunately, that is not what these investors want. I said it earlier, but we are going to have to one day have a conversation about the size of fighting game audiences and the size that major companies and investors want them to be. But alright, that's all that I have for City of the Wolves. For now. But you know, as long as I'm ripping band-aids off, we should also bring up that this was the month when Multiverses officially shut down. And it wouldn't be Multiverses if it didn't throw one final FU in there. The game is now no longer available to be downloaded unless you already had in your game library, and they did unlock all the characters for you to finally play as, but not all the cosmetics. That seems weird. Why not just give everyone all the costumes as well? You're not going to make any more money off this game anymore, so what gives? But I'm bringing this up because apparently if you had cosmetics already unlocked in the game, you had to log into that game before it shut down to download all those cosmetics onto your console. If you didn't do that, and like me, you decided to re-download the game after it had already shut down just to make sure that it still worked, you'd be shocked to find that all those cosmetics you had unlocked were now gone. You could have spent a small fortune to make sure that all your favorite characters got all the best costumes. If you didn't play the game in the final couple weeks, that would have all been for nothing. It's gone forever. At this point, I almost have to respect Multiverses for giving us one final bird flip as it was walking out the door. But let's get into some DLC. Galleon was at Granblue. I've been saying for a while now, I love this game, but I definitely feel like it has too many zoners. Well, with Galleon, they finally add another grappler. Granted, she is one of the most complex-looking grapplers I have ever seen, but you know what? It's another grappler, I'll take it. Although, I do have to point out, even though she is a grappler, She's a grappler who has multiple projectiles. This game loves its zoning so much it doesn't know how to stop. Then Mechajurus was added to Gigabash. It's just a robot version of an already existing character, but I'm cool with that because A, robot versions of characters is a staple of giant kaiju movies. B, it means Gigabash is still getting updates, and I'm always happy about that. And C, it was free. Oh hell yeah, I will totally take a robot version of an existing character if it's free. The Gigabash team knows how to make its audience happy. And the final DLC character, Unica, was added to Guilty Gear Strive. This is the daughter of Kai and Dizzy from an alternate dark future because that family tree wasn't already weird enough. Unica was a big hit with the Guilty Gear fans. I saw people talking about her all year long. Granted, it probably helped that she had a whole anime dedicated to her right before she got added to the game, but also, Unica is just cool. She's got a motorcycle that she can turn to a gun. That's exactly what I want from Guilty Gear. Then, no new games, but we still got some new releases. MK1 got a Definitive Edition, and the Capcom Find Collection 2 dropped. I said before, but this was probably my most anticipated release of the year. The past few Capcom Find Game collections were amazing. They were loaded with bonus content, actually had really good online. But the first Find Game collection was Red Earth and a bunch of Darkstalker games that had already been re-released a dozen times over. There is a whole generation of other fighters from Capcom that we had been begging to get a re-release for, but it never happened. And now it's finally here. I can play Plasma Sword, Power Stone, and Project Justice, one of my favorite find games of all time. They look great, they feel great. This collection was perfect. And I am so happy that people who have never gotten a chance to check these games out can finally do that. June is here, and man, this month was loaded with announcements and DLC. Elena was added to Street Fighter 6. After Street Fighter 4, it's weird to say that Elena is in a Street Fighter and not immediately follow it up with, and she's broken. Then Andy Bogart got added to Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. Really dig his redesign. Andy is a character that I never cared about, but you know what? If you make him look this cool, that could change. Then Shallot got added to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I said I wasn't really going to talk about a lot of the DLC for Anime Arena Fire simply because there is a lot of it this year, but I had to point out Shallot because I am a huge Dragon Ball fan, but I never played Dragon Ball Legends, the game that Shallot is from. So when he popped up, I literally said, wait, the guy from Cell Versus?
Why are you making eye contact with the camera?
Shut up. I'm trying to connect with the fans, okay? They haven't seen me in a while.
I seriously kept thinking that Shallot was some animator saying OC, so when he popped up in here, it took me a second to realize, oh no, he's actually from something. I just thought this was the weirdest guest character of all time. Then the mobile fighting game Marvel Contest of Champions got added to Steam. I've never played this game because it's a mobile fighting game, and yeah, I'm not a really big fan of mobile fighting games. That's not my preferred format to play fighting games on. So I'm glad this is now on PCs. And this was the month that the Switch 2 released, along with a brand new Switch version of Street Fighter 6. But more importantly, Soul Calibur 2 was added to the Nintendo Online service. This is a huge deal because A, Bandai Namco took this game off of other stores not that long ago, so it's good to see it back somewhere. And B, this is the first ever re-release of the GameCube version, meaning we finally have Link in Soul Calibur again. This is amazing. People never thought they would see this happen. Okay, we started the month strong and I'm going to end it strong, but unfortunately, here comes the meat in our bad news sandwich. Riot Games announced it would allow gambling in their games, and not like loot boxes or gacha elements. No, they're actually going to team up with esports betting groups to incorporate betting into their games, which immediately killed a lot of the hype for 2XKO. I mentioned that Riot Games is a horrible studio, but up until now, the Riot stink had managed to stay away from 2XKO. People were mentally separating that game from the rest of Riot. But I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say if in a few months after 2XKO comes out, we turn that game on and see a link your Bet Whale account now banner at the top, I get a feeling a lot of people are going to be turned off. But let's end June with some new announcements. The third season of Street Fighter 6 DLC was announced, and this season actually looks pretty good. You got your classic character, you got your fan favorites, you got your weird out there pick. I think it's alright. The announcement itself, however, Ooh, this was not the way to reveal these characters. Listen, I like Kenny Omega. I don't follow wrestling closely, but he's always seemed like a cool guy. He seems like a good spokesperson for Street Fighter. But when this trailer was revealed, people actually thought it was a joke. I watched multiple reaction videos of people watching this live, and so many of them were saying, wait, so is this the actual characters, or are they jokes? Are these actually coming to the game? And I'm including myself in that. I watched this thing and I seriously thought, oh, so these are fake characters and then you're going to reveal the actual characters after this, right? Listen, I get why you think that this was funny, but you want your character announcements to blow people away and leave them cheering. Instead, we were all sitting there unsure if what we just saw was real. You can't get hyped about a thing you're not sure exists. Now, when it comes to new releases, there was one worth pointing out, even though it wasn't official. This month, a fan game, Sonic Ultimate Smackdown, was released. It's a tag fighter that is heavily inspired by the Marvel series. Heck, some characters even have moves that are just straight up lifted from those games. And you know something? God bless the fan game community. I've been saying for years now that a modern day Sonic fighting game would probably be a big hit with that fan base. And now these devs have made it happen. When nobody else has the FGC's back, you know you can trust the fan game community. But if you want a more official tag fighter, 2 brand new games were announced this month, and both of them came completely out of left field. First, let's talk about Invincible Versus. Yes, there is an Invincible fighting game, and it actually looks kinda nutty. I'll admit the original trailer I saw, I wasn't really feeling it. I thought it was cool that it was happening, but the graphics looked kinda rough and the combat wasn't really impressing me. But a few months later, they released the closed beta, and I don't know if it was just seeing the full uncut gameplay or if they had more time to work on, but yeah, I think this actually looks pretty good now. Graphics look alright, the gameplay is fast and has a sense of impact to each hit. It's actually being worked on by some of the old Killer Instinct devs. I'm pretty excited for this. I will admit, I think it's trying a little too hard to show off that it's M-rated. Not saying it shouldn't be, this is an Invincible fighting game, it should absolutely be M-rated. It just feels like it's trying a little too hard to remind everyone, yeah, we can have blood and swearing in here. But the actual gameplay looks great so far. So yeah, a brand new tag fighter based on a comic book series was revealed this month. That is a big deal. And it would have been even bigger if literally the exact same thing didn't happen 4 days earlier. After years of asking, when's Marvel? Marvel finally decided, you know what, we don't really need these Capcom guys. Get them Arc System Works boys on the phone. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls was revealed, and damn, I don't stream anymore. I don't do reveal reactions anymore. But this one makes me wish that I did, because I lost my mind when this dropped. If you want to be an actor, you could have just watched my face during that trailer, because I think I went through every single human emotion within the span of 3 minutes. I'm a big Marvel fan, been reading the comics since I was a kid, and I love Marvel vs. Capcom, one of my favorite fighting game franchises ever. So this is a Marvel fighting game, and it's by Arc System Works, the masters of fast-paced anime air dashers, and it's a high-flying tag fighter, and you gave each character these crazy designs that look totally original. In fact, someone from Arc System Works even said they told Marvel, oh, we can try and make them look more like the comics, and apparently Marvel just flat out said, no, make your own thing, and make them look like Arc System Works characters. And you know something? That's pretty damn cool. Marvel spent the last decade telling companies that if they wanted to use their characters, then they had to be designed for maximum movie synergy, and you had to go through multiple levels of scrutiny to make sure that they matched the approved models, and now Marvel is just like, nah man, make them look like Guilty Gear characters, we trust you. And speaking of Marvel vs. Capcom, I love that this trailer showed off Storm and Doom, 2 of the most famous MVC characters. They knew exactly what they were doing there. Also, I want Marvel fighting games that include characters who have never been in fighting games before. So the fact that Miss Marvel and Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider are in here had my jaw dropping. I love Miss Marvel. The G. Willow Wilson run on that book made her one of my favorite Marvel characters, but most people only know her from that horrible, horrible Avengers game. So thank God she's getting a second chance at a first impression. And this game looks amazing. Robbie Reyes' original artist was Trad Moore. and when he summons out his car for his big level 3 move, the way the flames are animated is exactly the way Tradmore drew his flames. That is an insane level of dedication. However, when it comes to the way that the game plays, at the time of this recording, it's still kinda rough. The first beta launched and I got into it, and I really enjoyed it. A lot of people did criticize it for the auto combos being too strong, and yeah, I'll admit, you don't have enough motivation to not use the auto combos. They can definitely work on that. However, as weird as this is going to sound, the auto combos don't bother me that much right now because individual character combos don't really feel like the appeal of this game. From what I've played so far, the combos seem basic, but what makes them fun is using the tag system to spice it up. I didn't figure out any big combos with single characters, but I was having so much fun linking one character into another to keep the combo going, or calling in one of my assists to do a move. The assist would go behind the opponent, then I'd swap to them and start attacking the opponent from the other side. Stuff like that is what made this game feel really unique and interesting to me. But other people weren't too happy with that first beta. So they put out a second beta later in this year to address many of these problems. And oddly enough, it seems even more people were upset with that second beta, including me this time. As I said, the tag mechanic was one of my favorite parts of that first beta, and they said that for this second beta, they were going to change the tag mechanic to make it easier. But when that second beta rolled around, so many people, once again, including myself, thought the tag mechanic felt worse. It felt harder to actually get your assist to come out. So yeah, I think this game is still kind of early in development. I know a lot of people expected this game to come out in 2026 because we've already gotten 2 betas for it, but I think this thing is 2027 at the earliest. I think they dropped those 2 betas early on because they wanted to get audiences' reactions because yeah, a 4-character tag fighter is a crazy idea that no one has ever attempted. They probably wanted to get some feedback from other players before they continued forward. And yeah, they definitely needed that feedback. They needed to hear how audiences felt about this game. I'm just hoping they take the right feedback from those audiences. And what I mean by that is, let's be honest, a lot of people have had problems with this game, but I've listened to a lot of those problems. I'd say like 50% of the people complaining about this game right now are just saying, why isn't this Marvel vs. Capcom 4? They might not realize that's what they're saying, but I've definitely listened to a couple of people out there say, yeah, how come the tag mechanic doesn't work like this? And I'm just like, well, that's because that's how it works in Marvel vs. Capcom. This is not Marvel vs. Capcom. Or I've heard people saying, well, how come I can't do a combo like this? Because that's how combos work in Marvel vs. Capcom. Again, not Marvel vs. Capcom. Guys, I'm sorry, but that ain't what this game is. It's not supposed to be played like that. It's not what the devs wanted this game to be. But that being said, yeah, this game still has a ton of problems, and they do need to listen to that audience feedback. I'm just worried that all the people asking for this to be Marvel 4 is going to drown out the legitimate good critiques. Only time will tell on this one, but I am still excited for the future of this game. July kicks off with the announcement of a brand new My Hero Academia fighting game. Hell yes! I love My Hero Academia. It's one of my favorite shonen series. So many great characters, so many cool potential movesets. Please don't be an arena fighter. Aw, crap. Yeah, I probably should have seen this one coming. This is going to be a follow-up to the 2 previous My Hero fighting games. And I will admit, even though I am not a fan of anime arena fighters, those 2 previous games weren't all that bad. I did have some fun with them. It just drives me nuts because I so want a fighter-style game with My Hero characters, and man, we ain't ever going to get that, are we? 2 stories came out from Street Fighter 6 this month. They had the brand new ring announcer, virtual idol Navis. I'll admit, I have never heard of Navis, but apparently they're a big deal. But not everyone was happy about their inclusion because Navis uses generative AI. And that extends to their inclusion in this game. Yes, Street Fighter 6, arguably the best fighting game of the past generation, has now had generative AI shoved into it. That sucks. At least it's something that you can avoid. It's something you don't have to turn on. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I've never seen anybody actually play with those ring announcers to begin with. So yeah, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but it's not something you have to interact with. I'm just thankful that's the only story about Street Fighter and generative AI this month. Hold up, no it isn't. Capcom held another Street Fighter 6 art contest this month to create some brand new versus screens. I love that Capcom does this. It's a wonderful way to celebrate the fan base and salute the amazing artists who have been following and supporting this game. And there's always so much amazing artwork that's submitted every single year for this. But, one of the Kimberly artworks didn't quite seem right. An artist by the name of Hoodrat, who is an amazing artist himself, make sure that you go and follow him, really cool dude. But Ratty noticed that the winning Kimberly art had some problems with it, as did all the other submissions from the artist in question. And they were able to prove that yes, they used generative AI to make their submission. The Kimberly art was disqualified, and Street Fighter instead made a new versus screen in-house and gave it out to everyone for free. And hey, tip of my hat to Capcom. That was cool of them to give it out for free, good on them. Although it does kind of bum me out that this was an art contest, and they just made their own piece to take up the Kimberly slot. Like, you mean to tell me there wasn't a second place? You couldn't, like, go to the next winner down the line? Maybe they felt that if they did that, they would have to hold the votes all over again to make it fair. Maybe they were gun shy after that last winner, so they didn't want to risk it. I don't know. Maybe they had their reasons, but I do wish that they had picked one of the other winners. Moving on to DLC, honestly, there wasn't a ton of it this month. Abza came to Rivals of Aether 2. She's an antelope with the power of electricity and storms. I love that there's a game out there where I can say a sentence like that. And the big release this month was Fakumran from Tekken 8. And after that last balance patch, man, Tekken 8 needed some good news. And this wasn't it. Now, let me just say, I like Fakumran. I think he's a fun new addition to the world of Tekken, but apparently I am alone in this opinion. Yeah, people hated this guy in Tekken 7 because he was so strong. So you broke Tekken 8 with your last update, and now you're telling people the new character is the guy who broke Tekken 7. Not the best look. Now, as for releases, one of the biggest games of the year released this month, which really tells you how slim this year was for releases. Yeah, when I say one of the biggest, I mean one of the few games people were actually talking about, because long before this game released, people could tell this thing didn't exactly have a lot of money behind it. I'm talking about Hunter x Hunter Nin Impact, and you all know how this game turned out. Now let me start by saying, I am not a big Hunter x Hunter fan. I've watched it, I like it, but that's about as far as I go. It's not one of those series that I really freak out about. When this game got announced, I thought, oh, that's cool, but that's pretty much it. So there's no personal connection for me on this one. There's no characters in here that made me go, oh, I can't believe they put that character in there, and they're doing this thing that's a great reference to the show and the manga. No, I can really only talk about this game in terms of its presentation and its gameplay. This was made by 18, the same team that made such legendary titles as Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And you can tell because this game uses a lot of elements from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. When the match begins, it is literally the exact same camera angle from MVC 3. And Marvel 3 came out 2 generations ago, and this game looks like it also came out 2 generations ago. There's this weird hazy fuzziness to the graphics that make it look like everything was upscaled. It gives it this kind of low texture feeling to it. And cherry on top, this is a 3v3 tag fighter, and those typically need big rosters, so that way you can cut down on the possibilities of mirror matches. This game only has 16 characters. For a normal fighting game, that's about average. For a tag fighter, that is low. But you know something? I talk all the time about how I want more budget games. I want more fighting games that don't look like they have to buy an entire mocap studio and spend the cost of a small nation to make it. So I am totally fine with them recycling elements from other games or with graphics that don't look all that great or cutting edge, so long as the game is actually good. And, yeah, I don't know if it checks that box either. On the pure basic meat and potatoes level, there are so many small things about the game that just feel off. Like, this was made with an experienced fighting game developer, and it doesn't feel like it. Like, there's some basic features that are missing from this game, like there's no character trials, at least not traditional ones, and the tutorial is only in the story mode rather than having the option to just do the tutorial. And as I said, the team behind this game did Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and that game's X Factor was criticized for being too strong. And this game has its own power-up that's similar to X Factor, And boy, 18 really didn't learn anything because it is also insanely strong. You enter this overpowered mode, then hit your opponent with a raw level 3, they're just dead. And as for the actual combat itself, I gotta admit, I don't think mobility in this game feels all that good. Walk speed is really slow, your air dashes feel a bit floaty, and holy cow, you can keep even the most basic combos looping for way too long. You will see players just doing the same moves over and over for one big combo. So yeah, this game was not received well when it launched. In fact, it was kind of a punchline for the FGC for a few months. But that being said, I have still seen way worse games. And as much trash as I just talked, I have to admit, I find this game kind of charming. This feels like one of those old broken fighters that you would find back in the arcade days when they didn't have time to balance everything. We don't get a lot of fighters like that anymore. Again, not saying it's good, but somewhere back in the nostalgia-riddled broken part of my mind, I'm still kind of glad that something like this exists. Listen, the world needs that middle ground. It needs the B and C grade weirdos. We can't just have The Shining and The Exorcist. Sometimes you need the Toxic Avenger and Chuds. And this is indeed the Chuds of fighting games. For anybody not looking at your screen right now, Chuds was a horror movie back in the 80s. It's okay, 6 out of 10. It's the Hunter x Hunter Nin Impact of horror movies. Okay, August is a big month, so let's do some rapid-fire DLC. Izumi was added to Under Night. At the moment, this is the final character announced for this game. Izumi is insanely fun to play as. Her combos flow together very easily, her animations are great. Not the type of character I thought that I would enjoy, but I had a lot of fun with her. Wilness was added to Grand Blue, and damn does he look fun! Super aggressive big punch man who turns into a dragon. I haven't played this game in a few months, but most of the characters they've added this season have made me really want to jump back in. They also add EX characters, which are versions of existing characters with new movesets, and even if I'm not playing this game right now, I'm just glad to see something like this in a video game again. This is another one of those things that I would expect from an older fighting game, just using existing assets to create brand new versions of characters, and I love that. I want to see way more games do this. Ken came to Fatal Fury, the first of the Street Fighter guest characters. Again, I'm not playing Fatal Fury, but I heard a lot of people saying that they made him super complicated. That's all I know about. Speaking of super complicated, Lucy came to Guilty Gear Strive. Still can't believe this character is in a game now. This is such a weird but fun guest character, and her hack ability is insane. It's the kind of crazy idea I go to Arc System Works for. But that isn't all. They also include ranked mode with this update, and thank God. After all these years, I still do not like the lobbies in Guilty Gear Strive, and it's the main reason why I stopped playing this game, but ranked mode actually brought me back into it for a little bit. And that's not all. Arc System Works also announced Guilty Gear Strive 2, a big update for the game being sold as a brand new release. A lot like what Arc System Works used to do back with their older Guilty Gear games, like Xrd Sign and Xrd Rev. I am so glad to hear this, because I know a lot of people were turned off by the combat when Strive launched, but they have done so much to update over the years. However, most people won't jump back into a game just because of a balance patch, or one brand new character being added, or some new moves being added to their older characters. So you give them a big splashy jumping on point with a brand new release, then yeah, that can actually work. In fact, we know it can, because that's exactly what Arc System Works did with Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising, and that indeed brought a lot of players into that game. So I'm hoping that this will do the same for Strive. Also really hoping that this game is going to include the insta-kills from the older games. We kept saying that if those ever come back, it's probably going to be in some brand new version of Strive, not in a simple update. Well, this isn't a simple update. This is a brand new version of Strive. If it's going to happen, this is the time. But we ain't done with the DLC yet. Dojo Masters, this little footsie-heavy indie game from last year, got some DLC characters. Then remember Two Strikes from earlier this year? Well, they got a DLC character. Oh cool, it's probably some totally original wandering samurai or ninja, or stop guessing, you're all wrong. It's Baki the Grappler. I have so many questions. How the hell did this tiny indie game get Baki the Grappler? Did they know the creator? Is there some overlap between their teams? Did they meet in an elevator and start chatting? What's the connection here? Wait, hold up. One of the publishers of Two Strikes was Crunchyroll? Oh. Oh yeah, that explains it. Alright, carry on. And then the final DLC this month, Sagat came to Street Fighter 6. I'll be honest with you, Sagat has never really excited me. He's cool, but he's also really standard. Like, when you think of Street Fighter, you think of Sagat, so whenever they add him into Street Fighter, it's like, oh yeah, there he is, alright. But man, this might be the coolest Sagat has ever been. I know I'm biased in here because you all know that I love Street Fighter 6, but he just feels so good. Every hit from him feels like he's punching a hole through your opponent. It's like fighting a walking cannon. It's like I said earlier when we were talking about Mortal Kombat 1. Impact is very important for your fighting games. Sagat has impact in this game. Then a few new or newish releases this month. Marvel Tokon put out a beta. I already kind of talked about this earlier. I just wanted to bring it up again because I had to mention that this beta came out literally 2 days before the 2XKO beta. And I just love that Arc System Works has a knack for putting out their betas at the perfect time to screw over other fighting games. Then a Kickstarter was launched for a game called Royalty Free for All. It's a platform fighter using, you guessed it, royalty-free characters. And it did meet its goal. That's awesome. I look forward to seeing the updates for this. Then a new platform fighter launched on Steam called A Few Quick Matches. I know some people might judge it for these simple stages and stick figures, but I actually think this game plays pretty darn well. Admittedly, I am not a platform fighter aficionado, I just play those casually, but even though there aren't a ton of moves in here and there's only 4 characters, I was still pretty impressed with what you could do. The movement felt really good and each character is really distinct. If you like platform fighters and you want a fun little budget title, check this out. Then Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba The Hinokami Chronicles 2 launched. Again, already said multiple times, but I don't play a lot of anime arena fighters, so yeah, I did skip this one. But I did play the first Demon Slayer game, and I have to admit, it was pretty good. I had some fun with it, and even though I didn't play it, the people who did play it seemed to really enjoy this one. I heard a lot of positive praise for this game. Also, it's pretty obvious, and I don't have to point this out, but damn, this game looks amazing! This is one of the most gorgeous anime fighters in recent history. These supers are stunning. But what if you want something a little less official from your anime fighting game? Well, how about I introduce you to Hyper Dragon Ball Z? This is a fan-made game that has been handmade from the ground up. All the sprites, all the music, all the stages, all the voice lines. Yeah, they actually got a full-blown fan dub going for this game. Even though I'm sure they probably didn't have to. Do you know how many lines have been recorded for Dragon Ball games over the years they could have used? But they didn't. They made it all original in-house. That is a massive achievement. This is one of the biggest passion projects I have seen in my entire life. And it is a salute to what fans are capable of. Because not only is this a genuinely fun fighting game, not only does it have a rich full roster, not only does it have big massive animated supers which are an insane testament to how incredible these artists are, but it's also got this sense of humor to it that could only exist in a fan game. Like, they put in here tons of visual gags in some of their super moves or in their windscreens, and they even include the Peel-Off gang piloting a robot in this roster. That is such a good choice for a weird character that you know wouldn't be in an official game. Well, I bring this up because this month they put out their final update. This thing originally released in 2014, and they have been continuously updating it ever since. That's incredible. All the flowers to this team, and I wish them nothing but the best in the future. So August was a pretty good month for fighting games, but as we move into September, things start to turn. Let's start with the positives though. Hat Kid got added to Framemakers. Yeah, remember Framemakers? It's a massive crossover fighting game between multiple indie titles. I've been wanting a game like this for years. Heck, it was the subject of one of our first Build the Roster videos. And Hat Kid is a great choice. I love that game. But more importantly, man, Framemakers need an update like this because people have started to wonder, okay, what's going on with this game? Because this game has been around for a while, but it's still in early access, and they hadn't added a brand new character in over a year. So getting Hat Kid into this game was great because it told a lot of people this game was still being worked on. It is still on the way. Don't worry, Framemakers is coming. Then Aquapazza got a re-release. That is great news. This game is fun. It's from that PS3 generation of fighting games during the second 2D fighting game boom, and a lot of games from that time just feel like they've been forgotten, so I'm so happy to see it get re-released. Just wish it was a better re-release. The online in this game is horrible, and I have seen multiple people saying that this game doesn't work with traditional controllers, or it even bricks some controllers. I'm seeing reports of crashes, glitches. Apparently it still plays the same, but a lot of people can't get to that point where they can actually play it. I really hope they fix these problems, but it's been out since September, and they've done nothing to fix it so far. So yeah, this thing might just be permabunked. Speaking of re-releases, Real Bout Fatal Fury 2 got a re-release. SNK has been doing a good job with most of their re-releases. Some have had problems, but for the most part, they've been pretty solid. And I do love Real Bout 2. So it's good that people can finally play this game again. But a few hours after it shadow dropped, a lot of players started looking at those achievements and said, hey, those look a bit off. And people turned to Code Mystics, the team that handled this and most of SNK's re-releases, and asked them, hey, are these AI? And Code Mystics spent days saying, no guys, it's not AI. That's silly. We would never use AI for any of our assets. Yeah, so it turns out they use AI for their assets. Dude, a few things. One, if you use generative AI, just say it. You're not going to get away with it. It's the entirety of the internet you're arguing with. If you're lying, someone is going to find out. Two, if you are lying, try not to be smug about it. They were replying to people asking if this was AI with, we hope people wouldn't think a company lazy enough to use AI would spend a Sunday reverse engineering fake PSDs, laughing emoji. Smash cut to a few days later, we want to own this, so we're offering a wholehearted apology. They said it was just placeholder art that came from a stock art source that happened to contain AI art. And hey, maybe that's true, but if you know that you're taking art from another source and someone says, hey, I think this is AI, your first response shouldn't be, no. What, do we look lazy to you? No, your first response should be, oh crap, we might not have been paying attention when we got this art from another source. Let's stop and double check that now. Something we probably should have done before we ship the product. Also, speaking of that, listen, I know that making and re-releasing games is very hard work and requires long hours, but dude, it's the trophies for the game. You couldn't find an artist to make those for you? You need to scoop that up from some stock art? Don't get me wrong, stock art can be very useful, but this really feels like an instance where it wasn't needed. Also, you say this was going to be placeholder art. Doesn't placeholder art typically get replaced before you send out the final product? Isn't that why it's a placeholder? Also, you guys really went online and said, what are you guys calling us, lazy? And then your excuse was, we just grabbed some random elements that someone else made and we didn't stop to check and see whether or not they were AI. I know you guys worked hard on this, but in this one particular instance, yeah, that was kind of lazy, wasn't it? And lastly, also, don't f***ing use AI! But hey, crappy trophy art and a bad port, those are small potatoes. Let's talk about a massive fumble. Capcom announced that the big Street Fighter tournament, the Capcom Cup, was now going to be pay-per-view. Do I even need to tell you how much people hated this announcement? Nobody thought this was a good idea. Like, this feels laughably stupid. Street Fighter is currently more popular than it has been in decades, and suddenly Capcom felt their britches getting a little bit snug. Maybe they thought they could go up a few belt sizes. This feels like a train wreck in the making. Except then I remember that Street Fighter 6 is massive in Japan right now. And I don't mean massive as in, wow, it's really popular. I mean massive as in, it is consuming all other fighting games over there. It is one of the biggest esports at the moment in that country. It is insane how many people in Japan are playing and watching Street Fighter 6. So it is possible that all of us in the rest of the world are looking at this and thinking, dude, we're not going to pay to watch this. And Capcom is just going to turn to us and say, oh, good news, we don't need your money. Japan has us covered. And that's a frightening thought because what if this works? Yeah, there's two futures here. One, where this bombs and Capcom has to crawl back to us and say, we're sorry, we'll never do that again. Or a future where this does work, tons of people pay to watch it, and now that's the new standard. If this actually succeeds, if people line up to pay for the Capcom Cup, you know every other major gaming studio is now going to say, oh, hell yeah, we can jump on this bandwagon. And before anyone says, well, Capcom needs that money in order to support the Capcom Cup. I repeat, Street Fighter is bigger than it has been in decades and is one of the biggest esports in Japan. I assure you, Capcom does not need this thing to be pay-per-view to keep supporting the Capcom Cup. This is pure greed, and it could have a huge negative effect on all other tournaments out there. I mean, can you imagine if EVO decides it's now going to be pay-per-view? Speaking of horrible news involving Evo, yes, as bad as that news about the Capcom Cup was, it ain't even the big news this month. In 2021, Evo was bought up by Sony and RTS. RTS being a massive esports thing. Yeah, you look at their website and it's all very vague. RTS sits at the apex of the creator economy and esports to help creators, brands, and publishers make a long-term impact across the gaming industry. Great! What the hell does that mean? But Sony and RTS have been the owners of Evo for years now, but at the end of August, Sony announced that they would be selling their stakes to India-based esports production company Nodwin. Alright, so now Evo was owned by two esports production companies. That doesn't seem that bad. I mean, they seem like good fits, doesn't seem like much is going to change. And Nodwin has experience promoting and producing large-scale events, so they feel like a good fit. But then the story continued to develop, as this month it was announced that RTS had been fully purchased by Qiddiya. What is Qiddiya? It is a massive entertainment and tourism project that was created by, say it with me everyone, Mohammed bin Salman. Yes, Mohammed bin Salman now owns Evo. Hey, remember earlier in this video when I said that very soon we would need to have a conversation about money in these tournaments and how big they kept getting and who was investing in these tournaments and how much money they wanted them to bring in? Yeah, that conversation just got a lot sooner. I don't need to explain to you why this is bad. We all know why this is bad. We all know this is Salman trying to expand his control of the entertainment industry to try and whitewash all the horrible things he's done and to get people to accept all of his human rights violations because, hey, it's that guy who owns that thing that I like. We all know that, and as much as I hate saying it, I think we all knew this was going to eventually happen. Don't get me wrong, Evo has always had problems. I mean, hell, the entire reason they got sold to Sony in the first place is because it was revealed that Evo CEO Mr. Wizard had spent years sexually assaulting teenagers. Yeah, f*** him and anyone who knowingly kept that a secret. There has been a dark stain on Evo for a while now. But the moment it was sold to Sony, it felt like this was a different situation. It felt like now Evo had entered this corporate world where whoever had the most money could step in and control it. And Salman has a lot of money, and he really wants to control the video game industry. And let me just say, I'm actually proud of a lot of the FGC for being willing to say they can't cross that line. Sajam, one of the biggest FGC streamers and commentators who has worked for Evo for so many years, said he will no longer be attending Evo because he just can't support this. And Maximilian Dude, arguably the biggest face of the FGC, the guy who Evo literally builds a massive stage for each year so that way he can do his show in person, said he's no longer attending Evo because he doesn't feel comfortable with these new owners. These are probably the two biggest personalities at Evo, and both of them stepped away from it, and Sajam is not afraid to bring up the exact reasons why. Good on him. But we're going to have to see how the rest of the FGC reacts next year, because believe me, there are plenty of people out there who are still cheering this on because Evo now has more money, and it can now get even bigger. That is an exact reaction that I have heard from multiple people, and that drives me nuts, because it leans into this the line must always go up mentality. Don't get me wrong, it's good to try and be better each year than you were the previous year. It's good to try and improve yourself. But getting better doesn't always mean bigger. And when all you care about is get bigger, crowd sizes and views must always be higher, line must always go up, that can only inevitably lead to problems down the road. And Evo is already the biggest fighting game event on the planet. It has 2 major annual tournaments with a 3rd one starting this year. Las Vegas gave them the key to the city. How much bigger do you need this to be? I heard somebody say this is great because now Evo can put out even more events in even more cities around even more countries, and all I could think was those countries also probably have their own dedicated fighting game scenes and tournaments. Why not support them? Why not try and build up other tournaments rather than trying to fit all of them under one banner? Did y'all not have that phrase about putting all your eggs in one basket when you were growing up? Was that just me? And again, even if you're the biggest fish in the pond, it's still good to try and make yourself better and keep improving. But as I said, better doesn't just mean keep getting bigger. And if the only way that you can get bigger is to get bought up by an oil baron dictator, then maybe it's not worth it. I understand having that get the bag mentality, but maybe you should eventually ask, what's in this bag, who's giving it to me, and is that worth it? And I will say that other people have raised concerns about this as well, that maybe this could be a pump and dump scam. Salman plans on buying up Evo, making some money off of it, then if it tanks, he just drops it. I mean, if you look into a lot of his other business ventures, it's not like this is the first time he's done that. But other people have argued that that's not going to happen because Salman is a big fighting game and esports fan. He would never let Evo flop. Okay, if you say so. But remember that you said that. Just hold on to that for later. That's all I'm going to say. For now, let's move into October. Alright, each year when I do these videos, there's one month that is massive, bigger than any other month by far. And this year, that was October, and it wasn't even close. This month was Newsmageddon. There were brand new stories dropping every single day. So, time for the lightning round to end all lightning rounds. Starting with DLC, Neverbito joined Hunter x Hunter, Galvin came to Rivals of Aether 2, Joe Higashi dropped for Fatal Fury, Sea Viper got added to Street Fighter 6, and Armor King became the newest character in Tekken 8, and this one I need to talk about because talk about a bullet dodge. Like I said, all year round, people have been dogpiling on Tekken 8, and sure, for justifiable reasons, but they've still been dogpiling on. They have been looking for any reason to hate this game, so there was a leak that said that the next character was going to be Marduk. And let me just say, I like Marduk. Heck, I think most Tekken fans like Marduk. But he is not a character that you get excited for in DLC. Especially in the modern day, when each of these games can only add 4 characters a year. That dude is now base roster or bust. And I remember people were so upset with Tekken 8 this year that it felt like they were ready to pick up chairs and start chucking them at the stage if Marduk got announced. But nope, the leak was wrong, it was Armor King, and people were mostly okay with this. And Meg got added to Grand Blue. I still, after all these years, know nothing at all about the story of Grand Blue or who any of these characters are, but Meg fights with a tiny baby shark and her girlfriend, who is apparently jealous of her tiny baby shark. I hope that statement is accurate. I'm making these guesses based solely on what I have seen in her moveset, but you know something? She looks fun. Like I said, even if I know nothing about Grand Blue's story or characters, this entire season has looked really good. Each of these characters has made me want to get back into this game. Then for new releases, the classic Kazuna Encounter Super Tag Battle, the first ever tag fighter, and an all-around fun game all on its own, got a Steam port, also from Code Mystics. And hey, would you look at that? They actually used official artwork for the game's trophies this time. Glad to see they learned their lesson. Then the follow-up to Chaos Code Nemesis Experiment got a release. Hooray! The original Chaos Code is great. That is awesome that got a new installment. Except it's by EXA Arcadia. Boo! Don't get me wrong, EXA Arcadia does really good work, but from everything I've heard, they only really care about putting these games out in the arcades, and only in the arcades in Japan. There's no home releases or worldwide releases as far as I have seen. So yeah, I really like Chaos Code, but it looks like unless I'm willing to get a plane ticket to Japan, I'm not gonna be playing this one anytime soon. Then Virtua Fighter 5 got yet another version, Virtua Fighter 5 Revo World Stage. It is insane how many updates this game has gotten over the past few years, but hey, I guess that means it's selling well. Glad to hear it. Then maybe the oddest release of the month, a crossover game called East vs. Trails in the Sky, a PSP game from 2010, got a re-release. I have never even heard of this game, but the East and Trails RPG series, both of which are owned by Nihon Falcom, had a crossover game. What a wild pair of games to cross over. But you can now play it, and you know something? It's a pretty good port. I have heard people say that this feels like the old PSP game. However, I must clarify, I have heard that it is a good port, which means that it is an accurate representation of what the game was in its original format. The actual quality of the game itself is maybe the most infuriating fighting game I have played in years. This thing is awful. For starters, it tries to incorporate RPG mechanics into the combat. Okay, that's interesting. You could totally do some cool stuff with that. But they don't. You can have status effects put on your character, so you'll have stuff like confusion, which makes your controls reversed, or paralysis, or stone, where you get frozen in place and your opponents can just wail on you for an extended period of time. Good idea for an RPG. In a fighting game, that is insufferable. But the worst is that there's a level up mechanic in this game, not for unlocking things like character colors or titles or stuff like that. No. Each character has their own individual level that is stuck with them permanently across all modes, and every time that you level them up, you rank up their stats. So things like their hit points, their attack points, their defense. And if you jump into the arcade mode, each character is insanely stronger than you are. You'll go up against the first character in the arcade mode and you'll be doing like 6 or 7 points of damage with each of your hits, but they'll be doing like 30. And if you manage to beat a character, then the next character in the arcade ladder will rank up so much, they'll have like 500 HP more than the last character. I know this game was based on RPG series, but this is a fighting game arcade ladder. Where exactly in here was I supposed to leave and do side quests to grind and level up? Yes, you can level up easily in the story mode, but call me crazy, maybe the level up mechanic should only have been in the story mode. Leave arcade mode for the people who just want to play the fighting game part of this, not the RPG part. But even if you take out the RPG elements, the basic combat still kinda sucks. It's an arena fighter, and even if I hadn't already established I don't really like arena fighters, this is still a bad arena fighter. It feels like these characters can just jump and run away easily, almost getting lost on these huge stages, and I have zero idea how these characters track each other because you can have both fighters standing right in front of each other, and when they attack, they'll just go right past each other. And if a character is at a higher level than you, and I remind you, every character in the arcade ladder is going to be at a higher level than you, then they're going to take less hit stun. So you can be wailing on your opponent, and they'll just armor through all of your attacks to knock you out. And God help you if you're fighting the tiny little gunner girl Tita, this character made me want to eat my own hand so I would have an excuse to stop playing. She does nothing but spam the entire field with BS status effects, and I already explained why those aren't fun. Listen, I can't find any reviews of this game, but it got like 98% on Steam from the user reviews, and I do not understand that. I can only imagine it's people who are fans of these two franchises just happy to see them together. Maybe they only played the story mode, which is incredibly easy and you can breeze right through it, and they just enjoyed seeing all these characters interact. But viewing this just purely for the fighting game aspect, I cannot recommend this. But okay, moving on to something more positive, there is a little indie title called Skeletons Are Fighting that came out this month. It's a really cute game that's just, well, skeletons fighting. And you know what? It's actually a pretty charming game. It's not super detailed or anything, but the combos are pretty good. There's some interesting stuff that you can find in here. Each of the characters do play very differently from each other. And you can tell that was made by people who really love fighting games. They gave each character different variations that change up how they play, and you know I love when fighting games give characters variations. But also, a lot of the moves in here are taken directly from Street Fighter and other fighting games. And I can't lie, I actually had a lot of fun going, it's that move, oh, I recognize that one. So yeah, if you look at this game and you think it seems kind of fun, then go ahead and check it out. But that's not the big thing I wanted to mention about the Skeletons Are Fighting. There's a YouTube channel out there called Stop Skeletons from Fighting, and it does deep dives into the weird bits of gaming history, and I'm a big fan of it. If you've never checked them out before, then give them a watch. It's honestly great. I highly recommend checking out their video on the launch of the Xbox One and all the disasters surrounding that. That is one of my favorite videos to just constantly go back and return to. But I am bringing this up because the host of that show is this guy named Derek. And when the Skeletons Are Fighting was announced, everyone started contacting Derek and tagging him about it. So you know what Derek did? He reached out to the team at the Skeletons Are Fighting and offered to be the ring announcer of the game totally for free. And then they did it. That's just a fun story. That's the kind of news that I want to see. Next up, after years and years of people begging for it, finally WB decided to open the vault and let all the old Mortal Kombat games come out to play. The Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection released, including every MK game from the arcade era, and it wasn't just the arcade ports. They put in here all the home console versions, all the portable versions, they even include Sub-Zero Mythologies. Yes, that game sucks, but you know something? Even the sucky games deserve to be preserved. This is an amazing collection filled with everything that Mortal Kombat fans could want. Uppercut it into a spike-filled pit because holy crap, this port has problems. What elder god did Ed Boon piss off that every single time he tries to get these older games re-released, they end up cursed? There were so many technical problems with this game. Some of them really minor and confusing, like problems with the menus or player 1 and 2 switching in local matches. Some of them larger and more concerning, like it's terrible online and there were no lobbies for you to play with your friends. Dude, nobody is playing Mortal Kombat on the Game Boy competitively. Let us form lobbies with our friends so that way we can just have goofy dumb fun together. Also, maybe I'm misremembering this, but didn't MK1 launch with problems with the lobbies as well? How does this keep happening? But the big issue that everyone was talking about was the input lag on PlayStation. On PCs, it's not that bad, but on PlayStations, it was 8 frames, which is fine if you're making a visual novel, but if you're making a fast-paced game that relies on precise timing, yeah, suddenly that's a deal breaker. I know that typically fighting games have better input lag on PCs, but this was night and day. They weren't even close to being the same game. And considering that this game came right on the heels of the Mortal Kombat art book that used AI to upscale all of its old profile images, and they looked horrible. Seriously, the old Mortal Kombat 1 character images look like that smeared painting of Jesus. But the fact that this game came right on the heels of that, it raised a lot of questions about, how much are you guys actually trying to preserve all of your old Mortal Kombat content? Yeah, between the art book and this collection, this was supposed to be a month celebrating the history of Mortal Kombat, and instead, all of us were wondering, what the hell is going on with present-day Mortal Kombat? Seriously, who made this collection? Let's see. Digital Eclipse. Hold on. The same Digital Eclipse that did the Street Fighter collection and the Samurai Showdown collection, both of which were heavily criticized for their input lag? Dude. Ain't no way! You screwed up the exact same thing on 3 different collections for Capcom, SNK, and NetherRealm. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this out there. Bandai Namco has the opportunity to do the funniest thing right now with the Tekken collection. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to put Digital Eclipse down too much because they do actually do a great job of gathering all the information they need for the behind-the-scenes stuff in all these collections. That's always the best thing about them. And in this one, yeah, they did a wonderful job. Gained tons of interviews and documentaries all together for this thing. But damn, man, we have to point out, it is crazy that for over a decade now, you've been screwing up the exact same thing in all these fighting game collections. However, credit where credit is due, unlike a lot of the other collections that they've put out that people had problems with, they did release a patch for this one. And I will admit, I did not play this game at launch because I heard all the problems that people were having with it, so I can't compare its current state to its launch state. But just playing the game that we have now, it seems okay. I can tell that there is still a little input delay, but it definitely doesn't feel like 8 frames. This feels decent now. And you know what? Considering how important these games are, considering how many people have been asking for them for the longest time, and considering all the other amazing features on there, having the games themselves be decent ports, yeah, it's, I'll take it. But there was one more game released this month, and it was the biggest game of the year. Kind of. By which I mean it was kind of the biggest game of the year, and also it kind of released after years and years of build-up. 2XKO finally released in early access on PCs only, still not on consoles yet. Yeah, I get the feeling that someone at Riot just said, alright, enough of this already. You guys have been working on this game for a decade now. You're releasing it one way or another. Yeah, as I've made clear a couple times now, this game has taken a while to release, and a lot of people have honestly kind of been looking for reasons to dunk on this game, because A, it's been taking forever to come out. B, it's got a very small starting roster. C, it's a free-to-play game which can have negative connotations. And D, it's Riot Games, which definitely has negative connotations. Yeah, I knew a lot of people who were ready to hate on this game. They had a knife, a fork, and a bib, and they were ready to eat. They had their dunk tweets lined up and ready to go. But then the game came out, and oddly enough, everyone kinda liked it. I was bracing myself for the wave of negativity that was going to come from this release, but instead, this might be the most positively received fighting game of the year. Even people I knew who were openly saying they were going to hate this game came away saying, actually, you know what, it's pretty good and I kind of like it, and yeah, I want to keep playing it. And it looks great. I love the art style that they went with in this game. It is so lively and colorful and energetic. And when it comes to the combat, they've found a pretty good balance between being incredibly simple, but also creative. Like, if you just want to jump into this game, it is so easy to learn the basics. Specials and supers are one button plus a direction using the simplified input system that's becoming more popular in fighting games these days. There's also an auto combo system that you can turn on, or more accurately, turn off. It's on by default, and man, that took me a while to realize. I thought I was just screwing up all my combos. Also, I will say, even with the auto combo system turned off, you can't turn off the simplified inputs. A lot of the games that use simplified inputs also let you do traditional inputs, maybe to do like bigger damage or give you some kind of a boost for doing that. But here, it's simplified inputs only. And speaking as somebody who has spent decades now doing half circles and SRK motions, yeah, I'm taking a little while getting used to this. I do not mind telling you, I did not realize how often in fighting games I am just slightly pressing in a direction. Like, I am constantly sending out the wrong special because I didn't realize I rest my thumb on the controller, just slightly pushing it forward, and in most fighting games, it doesn't read that. 2XKO reads that. However, aside from all that, I gotta say, linking moves together in this game is so easy. Each character has a basic 3-hit combo that anyone can do, but then the ceiling after that is incredibly high. Each character has a ton of variety to their combos, especially when you start tagging in your partners. This game has an active tag system, and the amount that you can experiment with that and the variety that it provides you is insane. This game is constantly moving. It's so kinetic and engaging. My mind is always thinking in this game. And the roster, well, being only 11 characters, which was one more than they told us it would be, so you know what, good on you. But despite being so small, there is a lot of variety in here. Not just in terms of playstyle, but just in general. I know nothing about League of Legends, but this feels like a solid selection of mainline picks and the out there weirdos. And there's this really great level up system for each character that unlocks cosmetics, and I love when games do that. Ever since Killer Instinct 2013, I felt like every fighting game should adopt this method, so it's great to see it in 2XKO. Also, I should point out that you have the option to play on a team with each player controlling a different character. And man, when this was announced, I thought nobody is going to do that. But you know what? I constantly see 2-player teams in the lobby, so hey, I'll admit, I was wrong on that one. It seems like this is actually popular. Although, speaking of those lobbies, I do have some problems with this game. Mostly small stuff, but I am not a fan of how they do ranked and casual matches. When you select these, you go into a lobby, and you can just click find a match, and then it will hook you up with someone at a cabinet. Not even somebody there in your lobby. It can be somebody in a completely different lobby. But then that raises the question, why are you forcing me to go into this lobby to wait around and then run over to the cabinet? Can't I just click rank match and then you put me into a ranked match? I know it is a small thing, but it's one of those small things that just continuously irritates me. Like every single time that I go into one of those lobbies, I think there's no reason for me to be here. I could seriously just click rank match and then you just put me into one. Also, I can't believe that this game doesn't have any single player content. Or at least, I don't think it does. Maybe it's hidden somewhere, but if it is, I couldn't find it. I don't know if I'm just getting old or if it's because free-to-play games purposely make their menus as confusing as possible so that way players will get lost in them. But yeah, I could not find any single-player content within these menus. And don't get me wrong, I prefer playing online to single-player content, but I'm bringing this up because this is a free-to-play fighting game. 2 types of games that need as many people playing as possible to make them work. And casual players really like single-player content. So when you need to bring in as large of an audience as you possibly can, it is odd to me that you didn't include that. It's a bold strategy, we'll see if it pays off. However, as I said, the game itself is actually great. I really enjoy it, and everything that I just talked about is a nitpick. They're not big problems. But if you want to know what are actual big problems, this is a free-to-play game by Riot. You all know what the big problem with this game is. Yeah, the monetization in this game, not great. I'm not going to say it's terrible because the last free-to-play fighting game that we got was Multiverses, and that was so disgusting it turned everyone off. This is not that. 2XKO is not nearly as bad as Multiverses. The monetization in this game is not sickening, but it is going to make you a little queasy. For starters, to give it a little bit of a positive, this game launched with 11 characters and 6 of them were unlocked. And honestly, have to admit, I was expecting that to only be like 3 or 4 characters max, so 6 is actually pretty good. And they give you 1 free character token, so that way you can instantly unlock another character, so, you know, that's pretty cool. But after that, each character is around $10, and I think 7 or 8 is a bit more acceptable. $10, just a little bit much. But then there's so many cosmetics that you can buy. Costumes, intro taunt animations, and KO animations, which I gotta say, is actually a really cool cosmetic for a fighting game. That's kind of a smart idea. But the pricing on these, yeah, this is actually upsetting. Most of the costumes cost $20, and I'll admit the only other free-to-play game I play is Marvel Rivals, so I can't compare this to the entire landscape of free-to-play games and see where it lands, but in comparison to Rivals, most of their costumes are between $16 and $20. Alright, that's about the same as they are in here. But in Rivals, that's the only way that they make money. They give you every single character for free. In here, you got the costumes and the characters that you have to buy. Plus, Rivals gives me so many costumes for free. You can play that game without ever spending a single penny, and you're still going to unlock so many costumes just from the special in-game events or from the currency that they give you for leveling up your characters. And because of that, their $20 costumes don't feel that predatory. It feels like you can actually enjoy that game to its fullest by playing it for free. But so far, we're not really seeing that from 2XKO. This definitely looks like a game that you're going to have to spend some money on. And then there's the more high-end cosmetics, which just gets stupid. There's currently a 3 costume pack with some bonus cosmetics on sale in the game, and the sale price, I repeat, the sale price is $80 for 3 costumes. If you ever see someone in a match with one of those costumes, just let them win. They clearly need that victory more than you. So yeah, 2XKO finally launched and I've been enjoying it a ton. I cannot stress enough that this game is a lot of fun. But there are a handful of stains on this package that make me cautious about the future. I mean, this is a free-to-play game. Those need to bring in a ton of money to keep going, but this is also a fighting game. A genre that is often known for having smaller titles and only a handful of games at the top. We're going to have to wait and see what happens when those two realities meet in the future. Although, to end on one more positive, the devs behind this game have done a stunning job of reaching out to the FGC. Seriously, I am shocked at how much these devs do not feel like guys who just made a fighting game for a job, but they feel like people who actually know this community, they know what they want, they know how to talk to them, and they want to support them. The stuff they are doing with locals and other tournaments is really impressive. Speaking of tournaments, this month was the very first EVO France, and during the Dragon Ball FighterZ finals, it was announced that the rumors of this game's demise was greatly exaggerated. Not only was it receiving another balance update, which, yes, once again made some characters just crazy busted, but they also announced a brand new character. Goku Daima is coming, and yes, I know the joke that this game is just oops all Goku, I don't care. This game is getting its first new character in 4 years. This entire season could just be Goku's. I would be fine with it because it means this game gets to live again. I cannot believe that this game is coming back to life. How did this happen? Well, if I had to take a guess, remember last year when I said it was crazy that Bandai thought they could turn Sparking Zero into a competitive fighter when the appeal of the Sparking series is that it's just super casual and a fun game for Dragon Ball fans to play on the couch with their friends? And because of that, all those Sparking tournaments they tried to put together turned out to be a huge mess? Yeah! Well, and how after that plan tanked, suddenly this Dragon Ball game that has a dedicated competitive scene around it suddenly came back to life. All I can say is that when Bandai came crawling back, I really hope that Arc System Works took them to the cleaners. Now let's close out with a few announcements. Battle Arena Toshinden announced that its first 3 games would be getting re-releases, and I was never into Battle Arena Toshinden, it was just never my thing, and even I had to jump up and celebrate this. This is a long, important series in the history of fighting games, and it is insane that despite having so many installments, they've all been trapped on original hardware. Seriously, there are like no ports of any of these games. This was a long time coming, and I am so happy to see it. Next, in one of the most exciting, but also baffling news stories of the year, an Avatar fighting game was announced. Now, I'm excited for this. Love Avatar, both Last Airbender and Korra, and Avatar fighting game has been high up on my list of fighting games I have wanted to see for a long time. And I love that they're using sprites because it just looks more like the show. That is so cool. And while I wasn't impressed with the initial footage, later this year we got an alpha, and yeah, in actual combat, it looks amazing. I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far. But I also say this is baffling because remember last year when it was announced that Maximum Entertainment was making an Avatar fighting game? Maximum Entertainment having been the publishers of Them's Fightin' Herds and the developers of Diesel Legacy? And I talked about how Maximum Entertainment had totally screwed over the devs of Them's Fightin' Herds, and there were all these other stories about problems with that company. But then at the end of the year, the Avatar fighting game from Maximum Entertainment was canceled. Well, here's the thing. This Avatar fighting game is being made by Gameplay Group International. The reason why that's interesting is that Gameplay Group International is listed as the publisher of Diesel Legacy and Them's Fightin' Herds. Now, Maximum Entertainment is still listed as the developer of Diesel and another publisher of Them's Fightin' Herds, and I thought, oh man, I must have misread that last year. I must not have seen Gameplay Group International on there, and I just thought Maximum Entertainment did everything. Oh man, I really screwed that up. But then I mentioned that online, and someone reached out to me and said, no, I checked that last year too after I saw your video. Gameplay Group International was nowhere to be seen. It was only Maximum Entertainment. So that raises the question, what the hell happened? Who is Gameplay Group International, and how are they connected to Maximum Entertainment? Is Gameplay Group just Maximum Entertainment under a brand new name to distance themselves from their messy history? Well, I was able to get an answer to this, and for once this year, it's actually a good answer. Gameplay Group International is a brand new studio that was created by industry veterans, and their whole mission is to take unfinished games or games that had botched developments and releases, buy them up, and then give them a second chance. And considering one of the heads of the studio is Victor Lugo, who worked at Iron Galaxy on Killer Instinct 2013, yeah, I can understand where this motivation comes from. And the company acquired Diesel Legacy and Them's Fightin' Herds from Maximum Entertainment because when I think of games that have botched launches and mishandled developments, I think of Diesel Legacy and Them's Fightin' Herds. And in this deal, they apparently also got the very rough prototype for this Avatar game that Maximum Entertainment had been working on last year. And now, Gameplay Group International is continuing to work on this game by themselves, which is why they were able to get these previews and alpha up so quickly. So yeah, Maximum Entertainment is indeed not handling the Avatar fighting game, at least not anymore. Instead, it's a team that actually cares about giving older games a chance. So yeah, Maximum Entertainment, a studio that is known for mishandling its games, is no longer working on the Avatar fighting game. Instead, it's now being worked on by a team that actually cares about giving older games a chance. This actually feels like some good news, and I'm looking forward to where this game and this studio goes. But now we come to some sad news. In October of last year, the creator of Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive, Tomonobu Itagaki, passed away at the age of 58. Not much is known about his death, just that he had been suffering from some sort of an illness that he had been keeping private. Itagaki was a larger-than-life personality. Everyone knew this guy. He brought a rock star persona to the fighting game world. His rivalry with Tekken's director Harada was legendary. And of course, he created one of the biggest breakout fighting game franchises ever. His work on Dead or Alive not only made that franchise such a huge hit, it also would go on to influence the 3D fighting game world forever. Truly one of the legends of the industry, R.I.P. Tomonobu Itagaki. There will never be another developer quite like him. But we have one more story from October. SNK announced that it, alongside MBC and entertainment industry in Saudi Arabia, would be spending $1 billion on a movie studio that was going to be headed up by Eric Feig. Who the hell is Eric Feig? He's the producer behind I Know What You Did Last Summer. Okay. The Step Up franchise. Interesting. The Wrong Turn franchise. Less encouraging. Strays. Y'all forgot this movie existed, didn't you? And 2024's blockbuster, Borderlands. Oh God, please no. Well, okay. In all fairness, he was also for several years the co-president of Lionsgate, and during that time, that studio put out several big films such as the Twilight series and John Wick. Granted, you can argue about the quality of Twilight, but it did make money, so this guy does have some hits under his belt. But, yeah, I ain't feeling confident. And as much as I want to say this is all on NBC and Salman, let's be real. It's SNK. And as I have said many times, SNK is totally that guy who thinks they are way bigger than they actually are. I can totally see them going, hey, we know rich people now. Finally, we can start up that SNK cinematic universe that we always wanted to make that's going to take the entire world by storm. We're just as big as Sega and Nintendo. And don't get me wrong, I love SNK, and I would be excited to see some really good SNK movies. But no, you are not Nintendo and Sega. Yeah, this sounds like a train wreck in the making, especially when you see all the other people who are investing in this project, such as Andrew Chin, who is the big quote-unquote AI investor. Yeah, Salman has gone really big into AI, and a little preview of the 2026 video I'll be putting out next year that has indeed had negative ramifications on SNK. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, $1 billion invested into an SNK movie studio with AI investors. Is this a money laundering scheme? This sounds like a money laundering scheme. Well, okay. Listen, I'm being too hard on this. I know that after everything else that's gone on this year, it's made me a little bit jumpy towards certain stories. So I'm assuming the worst, but that's completely uncalled for. I'm implying that there is something shady going on here, or that this is just a big waste of money, especially after City of the Wolves had its very botched release, but I could be totally wrong. Maybe Salman really does believe in SNK, maybe he does think that this company has the potential to become something great. Maybe this could be the start of everything at SNK turning around. Remember when I said that this was secretly the King of Fighters retrospective part 5? Yeah, that retrospective left off on a lot of questions about the future, and boy, we sure are getting answers to them this year. It was reported in the Japanese government publication, the Official Gazette, that SNK was cutting its capital by 8 billion yen, roughly 80% of all its money. When I was working on that King of Fighters retrospective, do y'all know how many people kept trying to tell me, no, it's good that SNK is now owned by Salman because now they have money. Hey, congrats! Now they're owned by someone evil, and they have no money. I kept arguing with everyone after going through SNK's entire history that anytime SNK had money, they shot themselves in the foot. And they were doing their best stuff now that they realized their limits and were working within them to slowly grow over time. Then Salman bought them up, slapped their faces all over the worst advertisement campaign of all time, nobody bought the game, and now all their money has been slashed by 80%. Are we about to go for the company collapse three-peat here? If they start investing in pachinko, I won't even be mad this time. I'll just applaud the symmetry of it all. And listen, I'm not happy about this. I'm furious about it. But I just keep thinking about all those people who were trying to convince me that it was good SNK got bought because now they had money. Not that money is bad, but these people refuse to even acknowledge who bought them and what that could possibly mean because the money was the only thing that mattered. You think any of those people learned something from all this? Or hey, what about everyone who kept saying that it was good that Evo got bought out by Salman? Because now, even though Evo was already doing great and was a huge success all on its own, they now had more money, even though they didn't need more money. But in the end, that's all that really mattered. Line must go up at any cost. What do you think is going to happen to EVO now when they start slapping their logo all over WrestleMania and boxing matches, but then the next year, their money doesn't go up any? Think they're going to be fine, or are all their investments going to get slashed as well? I think this is my Joker moment. Okay. Now, in the interest of fairness, I should say, there are many reasons why a company would slash 80% of its financial reserves. It might not just be that the company is being severely downscaled, they could be restructuring. For example, let's say that you wanted to close some studios and then reopen them in another part of the world. They would then slash their reserves before moving that money somewhere else. So, say if the Misk Foundation decided they want SNK to now be closer to them in Saudi Arabia, that could be a possibility. But end of the day, that would also result in many of the SNK devs in Japan not being around much longer. Everything about this sucks. Well, there was some good news from SNK this month, and boy did they need it. Chun-Li got added to City of the Wolves, and like with any fighting game, each DLC character will bring in a temporary bump of players, but this was definitely the biggest bump they had gotten so far. Gee, I wonder why. And I will say, I've been tracking their player numbers all throughout the year, and every single time they got DLC, as I said, the numbers went up, but then they immediately went right back down again. This is the only DLC character they got where not only did the numbers go up, but when they finished dropping, they remained slightly higher than where they had been before. The average player base numbers did actually go up after this, so hey, maybe the game can still turn things around. Then there was another trailer for Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Community Edition. Don't have much to say about that, but it's cool that these fans are still updating this game. And it's also crazy that they made 2 of these big announcements this year. In previous years, we only got 1, so this is actually kind of wild. And lastly, Gamera came to Gigabash. Already said, but I love Gigabash. I love that it's still being updated, and I love that we now have a kaiju fighting game where you can play as Gamera, Godzilla, and Ultraman, plus a ton of awesome original monsters that this team made up. Play Gigabash, it is a ton of fun. And that brings us to the final month of the year with so much more DLC to talk about. Shinigami, the boss of Two Strikes, was added as a playable character, Mr. Big was added to City of the Wolves, and Miari Zo was added to Tekken. I think this character looks sick. She's got references to Ogre in there, she summons out animal spirits. This is easily the best character added this season to the game. At least in my opinion. This is so weird because all year long, I've been hearing people make huge stinks about every brand new development that came to Tekken, and yet I didn't even realize that Miari had dropped until I was researching for this video. I didn't see anyone on my timeline talking about. Although, you know something, after the year that Tekken has had, maybe that's a good sign. If they ain't talking, then they ain't complaining. But there was one more brand new character added to a game this month, and it was the biggest, most shocking addition of any character this entire year, despite the fact it wasn't even an official release. Modder Kong Ming added Yami Yugi to Dragon Ball FighterZ. Previously, Kong Ming created a Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure mod for fighters, and that thing was insane. A mod of that quality shouldn't even be possible, and the Yami Yugi mod is even better. He can set cards on the field, he can summon in so many different monsters, the camera work is unbelievable. He's got Exodia as an instant kill, he's got a whole card draw mechanic, and the number of references is just a dream for fans of the show. This isn't just the most impressive mod any fighting game has ever gotten, it is a competitor for one of the best mods in any video game, period. And I have never, ever seen a mod for a fighting game blow up like this before. Kong Ming is a genius. This is one of the greatest things I have seen all year, and I am so mad about it. Well, okay, I'm not actually mad about this. I just have to bring this up real quick because I find it hilarious that because of what I do for a living, I'm probably the only person on the planet who had this reaction. We have a show on this channel called Build a Roster, where we come up with rosters for hypothetical fighting games. At least, that's how the show started. Honestly, it's now kind of about figuring out how characters from non-fighting games could work in fighting games. And for a while now, I've been planning on doing an episode on a Shonen Jump fighting game, and of course, I was going to put Yugi in there. And the moveset that is in this mod is like 90% the same as the moveset I drew up for that video. The 5 cards in the corner of the screen, you use up a card to do one of your special moves. You have a draw mechanic. You can do an EX version of that draw mechanic to do the Pot of Greed, which allows you to draw 2 cards. Exodia being a random card that could appear as you drew, and if you got all 5 pieces of them, then you'd win. Using Dark Magician as your fighter while Yugi would be in the background. Summoning out monsters and spells and traps for your specials. Literally the only things that were in this mod that weren't in that moveset that I wrote up was Karibo as your Reflect, which is genius. Life Force Sword being used to counter assist moves. That is so smart, I never could have thought that up. And Berserker Soul as your super move. That is so freaking good. But yeah, I just had to bring up, there was an insane amount of overlap in the design of this mod and for the design that I came up with for that video. And as I watched the trailer for this mod, I realized, oh, I can't use that anymore. Crap. I'm not really complaining over here. This is so freaking cool that this thing actually exists. I just need to share what a weird feeling it was for me to see something so cool being brought to life and then immediately realizing, oh, well, that kind of screws over my plans. I just find that funny is all. Well, that was a fun story, wasn't it? Time to balance it out with some bad. This month, Netflix purchased Warner Brothers for over $80 billion. Why am I covering studios continuing to roll each other up like Katamari balls in a video about fighting games? Because remember, Warner Brothers owns NetherRealm Studios, meaning Netflix just bought Mortal Kombat. Or did they? Yeah, at the time of this recording, the deal isn't totally sealed. Paramount is trying to buy up Warner Brothers instead, and on the day that I'm recording this, WB has rejected that bid once again, and now Paramount is suing WB for not accepting their offer? I'm not sure you're allowed to do that, but screw it, I guess normal rules don't apply to rich people with the temperament of toddlers. Also, I just have to throw this out there, but reportedly Paramount didn't even have the money that they offered WB, so they had to borrow that money? Who did they borrow it from? You all know who they borrowed it from.
Because I've had enough of this dude. It's kind of right out of the frame.
Yes, the reports are that Salman actually put up some of the money for Paramount's bid, which means that if that deal had gone through, and heck, it could still possibly happen, then he would own both SNK and be co-owner of NetherRealm. Do not ask me to make an SNK versus Mortal Kombat builder roster, it will make me sad. But the big reason I want to bring this up is because when CEO of Netflix Gregory Peters was asked about WB Games, his response was, quote, "We actually didn't attribute any value to that from the get-go because they're relatively minor compared to the grand scheme of things." Now, I have heard many people freak out at this line, saying that this was Peters basically saying they didn't care about the video games and WB Games is dead, but no, that is not what he said. What he said is just that their primary concern was buying up all of their movies and, let's be honest, all the IPs that Warner Brothers owns. But he did say that they weren't really thinking about the video games when they made the purchase, which does raise questions about, okay, so do you have plans for WB Games? I mean, I'm sure that they do. Obviously, they are not going to let something that big just disappear. They are going to definitely keep making games. But considering that last year WB reported that their gaming division lost a ton of money, and Netflix said it wasn't something they were that concerned about, yeah, I do think we should maybe start preparing for the possibility of some cutbacks being made to WB Games, and that could affect NetherRealm. And it's December, so we have to mention the Game Awards. And before I go any further, yes, award shows are in no way a fair judge of quality. It's all opinions and blah, 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 blah. We all know that. However, the Game Awards is a huge event. It's a big opportunity for games to stand out and get eyes on them from a larger crowd, so it is important. I know that every year people argue about what does and does not get nominated, but the fighting game category has always been the king of screwed up nominations. Ignoring obvious choices, nominating beta tests as if they were full releases, nominating games that aren't fighting games. I said it last year, but this is the entire reason that I started doing yearly retrospectives, because I realized, damn, somebody needs to actually acknowledge the games that came out, and the Game Awards ain't gonna do it. And this year, oh boy, this was one of the worst years yet. Let's run down the nominees, shall we? City of the Wolves. Makes sense, it's a fighting game and it did come out this year. Then 2XKO. That is a fighting game that kind of came out this year. It came out in early access, doesn't fully come out till 2026, and you don't normally nominate other games in early access, but you know, it's coming soon. This is kind of like a soft launch, season 0, so yeah, okay, I can see it. But then you got Virtua Fighter 5 Revo World Stage. Dude, this is just a re-release. It's got a bunch of new features, but still a re-release. I could see nominating the first Virtua Fighter 5 re-release because that was essentially a remake that was redone from the ground up. It does feel worth acknowledging. This is like the 4th Virtua Fighter 5 update. Then there was the Capcom Fighting Collection 2 and Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. Do I even need to point out these are not new games? They are collections of older games, and the Mortal Kombat Collection isn't even a good one. People have been complaining for months about that game. Just think about the games that we talked about today. Demon Slayer 2, the Bleach game, Two Strikes, Iron Saga vs. Hunter x Hunter. Sure, not all of those games are good, but they are new releases. Yeah, this year. Oh man. I know everyone makes fun of the Game Awards, but something about this year just drove home how little they actually care about fighting games. But alright, we're in the home stretch, everybody. 2 brand new games got announced. Poly Fighters, which is a roguelike fighting game where you take moves after each fight. I love this idea. I have said many times, fighting games and roguelikes link up surprisingly well. And then there is Saturday AM Battle Manga. For anyone who doesn't know, Saturday AM is an online shonen manga style magazine that was started all the way back in 2013, and now they're getting their own fighting game, and it looks pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit rough right now. It's still in the early stages, but it captures the look of the comics. The combat actually looks pretty solid. I'm excited for this. If you think either of these games sound cool, then make sure that you add them to your wish list on Steam. I don't know how many people out there know this, but the way that Steam decides what games should be promoted is how many people add them to your wish list. So if you want to support these titles, make sure that you do that. Then Damon Bride, an arcade fighter from the 2000s, got a port this month, Damon Bride Additional Gain. This is a game that I've heard about once or twice before, but I've never actually seen it, so this was my first chance to actually check it out, and wow, this really is an arcade fighter from the 2000s, alright. This game has big "we saw Guilty Gear and said we could do that too" energy. It's set in a city ruled over by some kind of a holy order, and everyone has either an angel or a demon bonded with them, and the boss of the game is what I can only describe as an evil pope, and there's heavy metal rock music blasting all over the place. This thing is so over the top, and you know something? I kinda love it. This is that exact level of weird from the late arcade era that I love to see. And the combat is pretty good. It was easy enough for me to figure out quickly, and yet I can still tell there's some interesting mechanics in here. It's an early game from the studio that did Arcana Hearts, and I can definitely see the overlap between these titles. It's got that air dash Arcana Hearts is known for, but it's not nearly as floaty, which I appreciate. I recommend checking this game out, but I will warn everyone that it's got a decent number of negative reviews on Steam right now because apparently the online and the button configurations are very buggy, which doesn't surprise me. They announced this game at the beginning of the year saying that would be releasing in 2025, and it came out on December 30th. They were racing to hit that deadline. Then the final new release of the year, Hell vs. finally got a playable build. Okay, little backstory. A few years ago, a free game popped up called Helltaker. That was a puzzle game where you're going into hell and you meet all these demons that look like cute girls. Well, that game kind of blew up. People were talking about it all over the place when it released, and it was getting so much fan art, including from an artist named Kyohei. Well, this artist Kyohei decided a couple years ago they were going to make a fighting game around this. And I can't get over the fact that this is actually a fan game. Like, you expect fan games from stuff like Dragon Ball or Marvel vs. Capcom or Sonic the Hedgehog. This is a fan game for a little free indie game, and the Helltaker dev gave Kyohei full blessing to do this. He's got a whole guideline written up for doing fan content. And I just think that is so cool. I love seeing artists supporting other artists. You can download this build off of Kyohei's website, but I will warn you, it is still very early access, so don't expect much from the game right now. It's basically just a test build with very few playable characters. But after years of Kyohei talking about doing this, it's still so cool to see it finally happening. And now we come to our final story of the year, and unfortunately we're going out on a sad one, but it's kind of an appropriate story to end everything on. Katsuhiro Harada, after being the director of Tekken for almost 30 years, announced this month that he would be leaving Bandai Namco. I don't need to tell all of you what a legend Harada is. Not only has he headed up one of the biggest fighting game franchises of all time, but he's also constantly used his position to help raise up other developers, constantly promoting others within the industry. His personality turned him into a superstar that got even more eyes on his franchise and made him such a beloved figure that we all look forward to talking at whatever event he was at. It's impossible to imagine Tekken without Harada. It's impossible to imagine the fighting game world without Harada. He wrote in his announcement that he'd seen many friends and colleagues either retire or pass away recently. We already talked about his close friend Itagaki's sad passing earlier this year, and all of that combined to make him reflect on how much time he had left in the industry. So he decided it was time to move on, and that's understandable. I mean, Harada loves Tekken, but if you do something for nearly 30 years, eventually you're going to think, is this all I ever want to do? And if I want to do something else, when am I going to finally do that? But also, we know that Harada has not been happy with the current landscape of video games for a while. We know that because he's told us. That's one of the great things about Harada. If he wants to say something, he's going to say it. And on his YouTube channel and interviews, he's commented several times about how video games today are not how they used to be. He has so many investors now that he has to keep happy. Production takes so long, there's so much money riding on everything, and he does miss the older days. So yeah, Harada is moving on from Bandai. It is sad to see him go, but after everything that he has done for the fighting game scene, everything he's done for these communities, he has earned a chance to move on and do what makes him happy. And considering he ended his announcement by saying he always wanted to DJ a party, so he would be ending his time at Tekken by doing an hour-long DJ event, yeah, you know what? I think he's finally getting that chance. Good for you, DJ Harada. I wish you nothing but the best. And that, folks, is it. We have finally reached the end of the year. As I said, this was a rough year. I really hate being negative. I want this channel to be an uplifting fun spot to talk fighting games from every level for all audiences. But we can't pretend like the bad stuff didn't happen this year, and there was a whole lot of bad this year. SNK completely fumbling the launch of City of the Wolves, Salmon buying up EVO, Tekken upsetting the entire player base, NetherRealm's future being shaky, tournaments being cancelled or going pay-per-view, gambling and AI and multiverses, just multiverses in general. Holy cow, I've had to talk about the problems with that game in 3 yearly recap videos in a row. However, there are still plenty of games doing just fine. Guilty Gear had a good year, Grand Blue is still cruising along, hell, Arc System Works in general is doing pretty great. And despite one significant hiccup, Street Fighter is still bigger than it's been in decades. So there were positives, there were plenty of games that are still coming out on top. But speaking of that, I started thinking, if I had to declare someone the winner of this year, the big standout star of the fighting game world of 2025, I realized that that winner wouldn't be any of the games that I just mentioned. No, it wouldn't even be a real game, because looking through all of these stories, the winner of the year to me were the fan games. Yeah, each year I stop to talk about big fan projects, and normally there's like 1 or 2 things that I mention. But this year, we had more Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Community Editions, we had the Sonic fighting game, we had the final update for Hyper Dragon Ball, Helltaker, this little indie game from a couple years, now has its own fan fighting game, and of course, the Yugi mod that exploded and brought so many people back into Dragon Ball FighterZ. Yeah, if I think about the stuff this year that got me the most excited, it's just the stuff that fans and small creators were cooking up all on their own. And I think there's a message in all that. It's easy to get depressed looking at all the big fumbles, at studios getting greedier and all the buyouts, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at those. No, stay informed, obviously. But also, look to the people. Look to the communities. I had this thought when Salmon bought EVO earlier this year. Yeah, I was disheartened because the biggest fighting game event on the planet was now connected to this horrible person. We all love EVO, we all look forward to EVO, and now it's got this disturbing funk that's spreading across everything. But I thought about it and I realized, EVO didn't start in big stadiums. EVO didn't start taking over all of Las Vegas. Nah, EVO started in a mini golf course. And that's the great thing about the FGC. People are going to tell you that in order to survive, you need all this money, you need these connections to high, powerful people, you need to rent out these huge stadiums. No, you don't. You know what you need to keep the FGC going? 2 controllers and a couch. That's it. Listen, money and stadiums are nice, but the FGC can survive anywhere. End of the day, all you need is passionate fans who care, and the FGC has no lack of that. Just look at all the small online tournaments that have started up over the past few years that have continued to grow. Look at all the indie games that have contributed to a boom for creativity. Despite all the bad news, fighting games are still doing great. They're still bigger than ever and continuing to grow, but this year definitely left a lot of people feeling disheartened. It left a lot of players with a bad taste in their mouth and worried about the future. But as I said at the start, there was plenty of good this year, and a lot of that was found in the smaller side of the FGC. It was found in players and fans. So I'll just wrap up by saying, when the world gets too chaotic and you need some hope, look to the people. Look to your locals, look to the Discord communities out there that are always full of people ready to play. End of the day, that's where the FGC lives and breathes, and that is something that can never be bought. And as long as we got that, there is nothing that 2026 can send our way that we can't deal with. Nope, not talking about that. Nope, you know what? I'm done. I don't need to go into any of that anymore. That happened in January of 2026. That's next year's video's problem. I am done talking about this year. This was the 2025 video. That year is in the can. It's out the door. We are all done with that. I have nothing left to say. I got an Undernight retrospective to do. That'll be a fun thing to talk about. Thanks to all the patrons. Hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's. Bye, everybody!